Welcome villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I am your guide, KAGE, and I hope you like the video we have today. Please comment video ideas, and subscribe if you're new. Today we have, part 3 of What If Naruto Was Sent to Transformers. This will be possibly the last part, but if you guys want I can move on to the other movies. Here are our shout-outs for today. Thanks for all the likes on the last 2 videos, and I hope you all keep watching and more of you will come. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Part 3, Autobots roll out. A yellow Chevy Camaro with black stripes pulled into a large alley. Its sleek design and sharp curves were accented by the growl of its engine. The car's lights blared briefly, illuminating the grimy walls before flicking off, leaving the alley in an unsettling silence. An eerie feeling hung in the air, clinging to the car like mist. Naruto and Michaela stepped out cautiously, their eyes darting to the shadows surrounding them. Naruto shoved his hands into his pockets, his posture tense as if bracing for an attack. Michaela walked a few steps behind him, hugging her arms close to her chest, her eyes scanning the alley nervously. Naruto cast a glance back at the Camaro. The image of what it truly was, a giant robot that had saved them earlier, lingered in his mind. The car wasn't the same old, rusted Camaro he had driven before. Michaela's comments had apparently inspired it to change into a sleek, polished version of itself. Shaking off his thoughts, Naruto turned to face the car fully, his irritation bleeding into his voice. "Hey, what's going on? Why'd you bring us here?" He waited for the transformation, the twisting metal, the whir of mechanics, but nothing happened. The car remained silent. Frowning, Naruto stepped closer, his hands dropping to his sides. "Is there something we're waiting for?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge of impatience. The Camaro offered no answer, its stillness only deepening the unease. "Naruto, look." Michaela's voice cut through the silence, sharper and louder than before. Naruto spun around, following her gaze. A band of lights pierced the darkness at the far end of the alley. 4 vehicles emerged, their headlights cutting through the gloom. Naruto squinted, trying to make out the details as they approached. There had been 1 car, and 3 trucks, each vehicle looking more out of place when compared with the others. The car was of a sleek and silver design. He didn't know exactly what kind of car it was, but it was small compared to the Camaro behind him, and it seemed more classy. To the first truck, it was black, and of medium size compared to the other 2 next to it. It had to have been a Hummer, or some other kind of largely no-truck company, because Naruto could have sworn he had seen it before. Second to last was an emergency vehicle, but not like any the boy had ever seen. Like stated before, it was a truck, with multiple lights above its windshield, its back holding some resemblance towards an ambulance. The only thing throwing Naruto off was the fact that it was green instead of red. Finally, there was the biggest vehicle of all, a semi-truck with no cargo. Its tinted windshields made Naruto narrow his eyes, before his attention quickly darted towards its design. The cab part of it was blue, painted over with red flames, while the bed and the nose were the opposite, having red and orangish colors painted over by blue flames. "Who are they?" Naruto asked, the words were more so stated, rather than questioned. And as his body began to tense with anticipation, he readied himself, just in case something would happen. The vehicles made a short trip, having come to a stop near Naruto and Michaela. The semi-truck stopped in front of them, while the other cars formed a circle around them, which made Naruto question exactly how big the alley was. Engines slowly came to a quiet, the lights turned off as it seemed like a small waiting period was started. It hadn't been long, as once each vehicle's light was off, the recognizable sounds of metal shifting and clashing filled the air. Naruto now looked up at what was clearly forming into the biggest robot he had seen all night. the semi-truck designed with flames transformed first. The nose of the vehicle separated right in half, before the grille shifted upwards, allowing the two halves to come apart. Quickly the cab shifted as well, slightly opening and shifting small parts, as the whole truck began to rise. Back to the nose of the vehicle, it seemed that 4 limbs had shifted out of it, all going in their own directions. What was left of the nose started to shift into the cab. Both combined into what could be described as the chest. And once it seemed to be fully standing, a head appeared from the inside of the chest cavity, although it didn't seem to be fully formed, as some minor parts on their metal face shifted into each other, and locked into place. Once all of that was over, Naruto and Michaela looked around themselves to see the other vehicles, including the Camaro behind them, had turned into robots of some kind. The figure that had once been a semi-truck bent down slowly, its massive frame creaking as it crouched to meet Naruto's gaze. Bright, piercing blue optics locked onto the blonde, scrutinizing him with an intensity that felt almost tangible. For a moment, it seemed as though the giant robot was searching for something unspoken in Naruto's eyes, as if silently questioning his very presence. Naruto didn't flinch under the scrutiny. His own gaze hardened, his jaw tightening as he returned the look with defiance. There was no fear in his posture, only resolve. The two stared at each other in a tense silence, until the robot straightened slightly, almost as if it had come to a conclusion. Then, its deep, resonant voice broke the quiet. "Are you Naruto Rika Witwicky, adopted son of Ron Witwicky, descendant of Captain Archibald Witwicky?" it asked. Its tone was flat and serious, laced with an undeniable air of authority. Naruto blinked, taken aback by the sheer specificity of the question. Beside him, Michaela's head snapped toward him, her mouth slightly agape. "It knows your name," she murmured, her voice a mix of disbelief and wonder. The words barely registered as Naruto kept his eyes on the towering figure. His mind raced, trying to process how the robot could possibly know so much about him, about his family. Adrenaline pumped through his veins, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Yeah, that's me," Naruto said finally, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "How do you know who I am?" The robot paused for a beat, its optics flickering slightly as if processing his response. Then, it straightened fully, towering over both of them once more. "I am Optimus Prime," it declared, its voice carrying a commanding yet calm presence. "We are autonomous robotic organisms from the planet Cybertron. Cybertronians, to be exact. But you can call us Autobots for short," chimed in the robot that had once been the emergency vehicle. Naruto's eyes turned to the green robot, taking in its unique design, bulky yet efficient, with the clear markings of an emergency responder. "This is our medic, Ratchet," Optimus said, gesturing toward the green Autobot. Ratchet gave a small nod before speaking, his tone practical but not unkind. "You're a lot smaller than I expected for someone tied to this mess. No visible injuries, that's good, but I am sensing high fermion levels, suggesting the blonde wants to mate with the female." Naruto frowned slightly, unsure if that was meant as a compliment or something else entirely. However, the two humans left the statement alone, not wanting to answer anything about it. Before Optimus could respond, another voice, smoother and more laid back, chimed in from behind them. "What's crackin', little bitches? This seems like a cool place to kick it," said a voice, accompanied by the sound of metal crunching. Naruto spun around to see the source of the noise, the silver robot that had once been the sleek, silver car. Smaller than the others and clearly more relaxed. It was now sitting on top of a car that had been parked in the alley, a car now reduced to scrap metal under the Autobot's weight. "That is my first lieutenant, designation, Jazz," Optimus said, gesturing to the silver robot with a metallic hand. Michaela turned sharply toward the new speaker, her curiosity shining on her face. "Where did he learn to talk like that?" she asked. "We learned your language from the World Wide Web," Optimus answered, his tone calm as he gestured to the next robot, a towering, lean figure with massive cannons on its arms. "This is my weapons specialist, Ironhide." In response, Ironhide spun the cannons on his arms before pointing one directly at Naruto. "Feelin' lucky, punk?" he said gruffly, a smirk evident in his voice. "Easy, Ironhide," Optimus said sharply, making the weapons specialist lower his weapons with a sigh. "Was just showin' off," Ironhide muttered, though he cast an almost playful glare at Naruto. Finally, the Camaro, now fully transformed into a humanoid robot, stepped forward. "And last but not least, Bumblebee, your guardian," Optimus announced, his deep voice resonating as he nodded toward the yellow Autobot. Bumblebee stepped forward, his movements fluid despite his size. He offered a mock salute before turning to face Naruto and Michaela, his body language exuding a sense of ease. With a flourish, he began punching the air in a series of playful, quick jabs, clearly showing off. Naruto raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms with an amused smirk. "Bumblebee, huh? My guardian?" The yellow Autobot nodded enthusiastically, a burst of radio static escaping him before a clear audio clip emerged. "Yep, that's me." Naruto chuckled, "All right then, B. Guess we're stuck with each other." Michaela, standing just beside him, tilted her head, her curiosity still unquenched. "So why exactly are you all here?" Optimus's expression turned serious, his piercing blue optics dimming slightly. "We are here looking for the All-Spark," he stated firmly, "and we must find it before Megatron." Naruto's eyes focused on Optimus, wondering exactly what the leader was talking about. But before he was able to question the robot, Michaela beat him to it. "Wait, what's an All-Spark, and who is Megatron?" she asked, her eyes focusing just like Naruto's. Optimus looked away solemnly, he then turned back to Naruto and Michaela, before tapping the side of his head. Unexpectedly, the small action caused Optimus's eyes to glow and project light, plunging everyone into a hologram world. The light in the alley seemed brighter, and more red, as metallic towers rose right in front of Naruto. Cybertron was an empire made from peace. It was long-lasting, until Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, betrayed Cybertron. As Optimus spoke, an image of a metal monster, similar to the one Bumblebee had saved them from, appeared standing above other Cybertronian bodies. Naruto presumed this to be Megatron, and would be happy to never see him in his life, but something told him such a thing wouldn't happen. Soon after the war had destroyed our planet, the All-Spark had been lost. The All-Spark is an artifact that can be used to create Cybertronians. Megatron followed it to Earth, but he thankfully was never able to find it. The scene of the holograms shifted once more, now conveying a frozen ice land that seemed to catch Naruto's attention. Optimus's gaze settled on him once again. "However, Megatron was accidentally found by your great-grandfather, Captain Archibald Witwicky, discovered Megatron, and unknowingly activated his nebular ion systems, imprinting the coordinates of the All-Spark on his glasses." Naruto blinked, caught off guard as the holograms began to fade. Ratchet then stepped forward, resting his arms on his hips as he spoke. "If the Decepticons finds the All-Spark, they will use it to create a new army, destroying the human race in the process." And as if to stress their point, the Autobots grouped together around the two humans, standing at their full heights tensely, each with a hardened look. Optimus then spoke out to them, his voice as serious and commanding as before. "We must find the All-Spark before it is too late. Naruto Witwicky, the fate of this world is in your hands." Naruto felt a chill run down his spine at the weight of those words. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Kurama's deep, mocking voice rumbled in his mind. Told you so, brat. Trouble always finds you, but no, you wanted the quiet life. How's that working out for you now? Naruto groaned audibly, rubbing the back of his head in exasperation. Not now, furball, he muttered under his breath. Michaela glanced at him, puzzled. What was that? Nothing, Naruto replied quickly, shooting her a sheepish grin before turning his attention back to Optimus. He shoved Kurama's sarcastic remarks to the back of his mind and squared his shoulders. All right, he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions churning inside him. If the world's counting on me, then I'm in. Just tell me what I need to do. Optimus gave a slow nod of approval before shifting back into his truck form. The other Autobots followed suit, the sound of shifting metal filling the air as they transformed into their vehicle modes. Naruto and Michaela exchanged glances before heading toward Bumblebee. The yellow Camaro opened its doors for them, and they slid into the back seats without a word. As soon as they were inside, Bumblebee revved his engine and took off, the convoy of Autobots following closely behind. The two sat in silence as the city lights blurred past. Naruto leaned back in his seat, his brow furrowed in thought. Ever since the night Kurama had awakened inside him, responsibility seemed to chase him wherever he went. First the fox, now giant alien robots telling him the fate of the world was in his hands. You really know how to pick your battles, huh? Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, the fox's tone halfway between amusement and irritation. A cursed kid with a demon fox wasn't dramatic enough, you had to go and get involved with alien wars too. Naruto scowled internally, I didn't ask for any of this, furball. It's not like I had a choice. Kurama let out a low growl of laughter, you never do, brat. But at least this time. You've got backup. Even if they are just oversized tin cans. Naruto ignored the jab, his gaze drifting to Michaela. She was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. After a moment, he broke the silence. You good? He asked, his voice softer than usual. Michaela blinked and turned to him, managing a small smile, yeah, just processing. Giant robots, secret wars, ancient alien cubes, it's a lot to take in, you know? Naruto nodded, his lips twitching into a faint smile, yeah, tell me about it. Bumblebee's radio crackled to life, interrupting the moment. A voice snippet played, upbeat and reassuring, we'll make it through this. Naruto smirked, the brief levity lifting some of the tension. Thanks, B. For a moment the three paused, going into a short silence that seemed to calm them a bit. Until Michaela turned back to Naruto with a bit of obvious curiosity. The blonde quickly caught this and was a bit confused, and before he could ask her about it surprisingly or unsurprisingly she spoke first. You still haven't told me about that blue ball of energy you used, she stated as if she knew the blonde was avoiding that very thing. Naruto's smirk faded slightly at Michaela's words, and his gaze flicked away to the passing city lights. He had been hoping to avoid that conversation for as long as possible. Of course, Michaela wasn't the type to let things slide, especially when they involved something as outlandish as the Rasengan. I don't know what you're talking about, Naruto deflected casually, leaning back in his seat with a forced nonchalance. Michaela raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms over her chest, don't play dumb, Naruto, that ball of energy, you used it to take down that first Decepticon, what was that? Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, sighing in defeat, it's complicated, he muttered. Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, dripping with sarcasm, oh sure, kid, tell her all about it. I'm sure she'll totally believe you have a giant fox demon stuck in your head too. Not helping, Naruto shot back internally, his annoyance flaring. He turned his attention back to Michaela, who was still waiting expectantly. Alright, fine, it's called the Rasengan, he admitted reluctantly, it's something I only just learned I could do. Michaela's brow furrowed. Seems kinda convenient, said the girl, but when did you find out you could do that sort of thing, and how? Naruto gave her a half smile. You seem more okay with this than you were with the giant robots from space. She stared at him for a moment, clearly unsatisfied with the deflection. You're seriously not going to explain it, are you? Naruto shrugged. Look, Michaela, it's just one of those things. Let's just say, since last night, I've had a bit of a change. Trust me, it's too complicated to get into. Michaela looked unmoved. Naruto could tell just by the look of her face she wasn't taking no for an answer. And it seemed that his new abilities had really piqued her interest. You aren't gonna let this go, are you? Questioned the blonde almost silently. He then looked to her eyes, searching for an answer from her. Michaela gave a mock pout, cocking her head to the side as she looked at Naruto closely. Come on, look, I'll even sit on your lap if you tell me. She gave a smirk once she finished, already having noticed a blush that appeared on the blonde. There was no verbal response, but quickly Naruto looked away from her gaze, giving a small sigh as it was clear she would just keep asking him about it. And if he was being honest, he probably would have cracked at some point even if she wasn't asking. Mainly because he barely knows enough about all this stuff to even fully explain. With the decision made, the blonde decided to keep it basic. There was no need to tell her everything. Hell, he didn't even know everything. Naruto leaned back against the seat, staring out the window as he gathered his thoughts. Alright, he began, his tone more resigned than anything, but don't expect some long, drawn-out explanation, okay? Like I said, it's complicated, and I'm still figuring it out myself. Michaela leaned in slightly, her curiosity piqued. I'm listening. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he'd developed whenever he was uncomfortable. So, last night, after I dropped you off, something woke up inside me. This, energy or power, I guess it's like it was always there, but I didn't know how to use it until now. Michaela tilted her head. Energy, like magic or something? Naruto shook his head. Not magic, it's more like chakra, from Japanese folklore. Think of it like life energy, but I'm able to use it in different ways, like that Rasengan you saw. Michaela frowned, trying to process what she was hearing. Okay, so you just suddenly unlocked this power? Naruto hesitated, his fingers drumming on his knee. Something like that. Let's just say I've got help figuring it out. Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, full of dry amusement. Oh, yeah, I'm just help. Huh. Don't forget who saved your sorry ass last night, kid. Naruto ignored the comment, focusing instead on Michaela. Look, it's not like I fully understand it myself. All I know is that it's here now, and it's not going away anytime soon. Michaela leaned back, her expression a mix of intrigue and disbelief. So, you've got some kind of mystical energy, and now you're what, a superhero? Naruto snorted. Hardly, he said with some amusement. I'm just a guy trying to keep up with giant alien robots and figure out why the universe decided to dump all this on me. A quick pause silenced the air between the two, before Naruto recalled what the girl had promised. What was it you said you would do if I told you about everything? Naruto asked. He gained a slight smirk as he looked towards the raven-haired beauty and saw her smile falter. Michaela blinked, her cheeks flushing slightly as Naruto's words caught her off guard. She had been so wrapped up in her curiosity that she'd almost forgotten her earlier, teasing promise. Well, she started, attempting to recover her composure. I did say I'd sit on your lap, didn't I? Naruto's smirk widened. You did, and, you know, a deal's a deal. Michaela rolled her eyes, but the playful grin tugging at her lips betrayed her amusement. Fine, but only because you actually answered me for once. She slid over from her seat, swinging a leg over to straddle Naruto's lap, her face inches from his. Happy now, hotshot? Naruto froze, his face heating up like a furnace. He stammered, his confident smirk replaced by wide eyes and a nervous grin. Michaela laughed at his reaction, leaning back just enough to enjoy his flustered state. Relax, Naruto, I'm just holding up my end of the bargain. Besides, she added, poking his forehead lightly, you're not that intimidating. Kurama's voice boomed in Naruto's mind, full of mocking laughter. She's got you good, kid. You're supposed to be a ninja, not a blushing schoolboy. Not helping, Naruto mentally snapped back, his face growing redder by the second. Eventually, the two sat quietly, the faint hum of Bumblebee's engine filling the silence as they enjoyed the moment. Michaela rested her head against Naruto's chest, her warmth both grounding and comforting. Naruto wouldn't admit it aloud, but her presence soothed him in ways he hadn't expected. Still, every so often, the bumps in the road snapped him back to reality, keeping him from fully melting into the moment. Eventually, the car came to a smooth stop outside Naruto's home. The sense of urgency lingered in the air despite the temporary peace. Naruto's thoughts were fixated on the item Optimus had mentioned, something crucial to finding the Allspark. As he and Michaela stepped out of the car, he could hear the low rumble of the Autobots' engines as they parked discreetly not far behind. The night was still and heavy, its dark beauty almost impenetrable, save for the faint glow of dim lanterns lining the street. Their light barely cut through the shadows, leaving the surroundings bathed in a muted, eerie atmosphere. Naruto's steps echoed faintly on the wet pavement, the soft slap of his sneakers adding to the quiet tension. Naruto stopped at the front door, fishing his keys out of his pocket. I think you should stay out here, he stated almost out of nowhere. My parents are probably worried as hell with how long I've been out. Michaela raised a brow. Really, you're acting as if my parents aren't going to be worried. Naruto shrugged, pushing the door open and stepping inside. The house was lit with dim lights, the familiar orange hues of home offering a brief sense of normalcy in the chaos of the past few days. I'll call you when I got the glasses. We can get out of here right after. Please just watch the giant death robots, he muttered. He didn't look back to the black-haired girl, knowing if she did she would somehow convince him to let her in. However, he knew even with how late it was, his parents were still awake, and having a girl in the house would not only make it worse, it would make it weird since he wasn't known for such a thing. Naruto closed the door slowly, shutting it as quietly as he could. After he did so he waited, listening for any noise that could determine if he was caught. Once figuring that he was still in the clear, after only hearing the of his home, he moved carefully to get towards the stairs. However, he didn't make it halfway to the steps before his father stood in front of him, clearly unhappy as his balled-up fists and held them on his sides. The blonde looked a bit worried when he saw this, but his expression quickly turned to fear, finding his mother, who was once in the dark, swivel around in her chair and turn on a brighter light right beside her. "Where were you at this time of night?" questioned Ron, his voice a low tone, making Naruto unaware of how the man felt. His mother on the other hand didn't speak, she stayed silent, giving a look of disapproval that the blonde hadn't seen more than a few times. "Where have you been, Naruto?" Ron asked, his tone calm but laced with suspicion. Naruto hesitated, scratching the back of his head. Just out, with some friends, lost track of time, you know?" Ron's eyes narrowed, and before Naruto could take another step, his mother's voice cut through the silence. "Lost track of time, Naruto, it's almost midnight," Judy called out as she entered the room, arms crossed. She turned on the brighter light, making him wince slightly. And what's all that noise outside? It sounds like a construction site out there. Naruto's stomach dropped. Outside, the Autobots were clearly having trouble staying subtle. A faint clank and the sound of something scraping against metal echoed faintly through the walls. "Oh, that," Naruto said quickly, laughing nervously. Probably the neighbors, you know how they are, always tinkering with something. It's a generator or something." Judy frowned, unconvinced. At this hour? "Yeah, they're, night owls," Naruto said, walking toward the stairs as casually as possible. "Anyway, I'm exhausted, long day, you know, I'm gonna head to bed." The blonde would have kept going. But the sound of something heavy landing outside made all three of them freeze. Judy's eyes widened as she turned toward the window. What in the world was that? Ron stepped closer to the front door. "I'm gonna check it out." "No, no, no," Naruto said quickly, darting in front of him. He held up his hands, a nervous grin plastered on his face. "It's probably just, raccoons, yeah, those raccoons. Big ones, you don't want to deal with that, trust me." "Raccoons," Ron repeated, raising an eyebrow. Another faint whir from outside sent Naruto into panic mode. He grabbed his father's arm, gently steering him back toward the kitchen. "Seriously, it's nothing, I'll take care of it in the morning. Let's not make it a whole thing, okay?" Before Ron could argue, Judy chimed in again, her voice sharp. "And what's with your shoes, did you step in mud?" Naruto looked down and cursed inwardly at the faint trail of dirt he'd accidentally tracked in. Yeah, sorry about that. It was dark outside, I'll clean it up first thing tomorrow, I promise." Judy narrowed her eyes but sighed. "Fine, but you're not off the hook for sneaking in so late, we're talking about this in the morning." "Absolutely," Naruto said with a relieved nod, inching closer to the stairs. "Totally fair, morning talk, got it." Just as he turned to head upstairs, another muffled clang came from outside, followed by Bumblebee's distinct attempt at a soft radio clip. "What is that?" Ron said, heading back toward the door. Naruto moved quickly, blocking his path again. "It's nothing. Seriously. Just go to bed, Dad." Ron stared at him suspiciously. "Naruto, are you hiding something?" "Hiding something, me?" Naruto forced out a laugh. "Come on, Dad." "What would I even?" A loud, unmistakable rev of an engine cut him off, and Naruto felt the blood drain from his face. "That's it," Ron said, reaching for the door. "No," Naruto practically shouted, throwing himself in front of it. It's nothing. Just the neighbors starting their car, they do that sometimes, really weird habit, anyway, good night." Before his father could protest further, Naruto bolted up the stairs, taking them two at a time. Judy called after him, "Naruto, don't think this is over." "Totally fine, good night," Naruto shouted back, disappearing into his room and slamming the door shut behind him. He leaned against the door, exhaling heavily. From the window, he could see Bumblebee giving him a thumbs up, or at least the Autobot equivalent. "Subtle, huh?" Naruto muttered to himself. Kurama's voice rumbled in his head. "This is what happens when you rely on others. Maybe next time, I should take the lead." "Yeah, because a giant fox would definitely be less conspicuous," Naruto shot back sarcastically. Ignoring Kurama's grumbling, he moved to his desk to find the glasses. Naruto started to frantically look for them. He knew he had them, they had to be here somewhere. After a few seconds he began to think there was something wrong. He hasn't even found a glimpse of them. He had sworn he put them in his bag, but now, the bag wasn't anywhere to be seen. Naruto froze mid-thought, his eyes darting toward the corner of the room where his bag usually sat. It wasn't there. Panic started to creep in as he scanned the room again, more frantically this time. No, 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 he muttered under his breath, kneeling to check under his bed and behind his desk. I know I brought it home, where the hell is it? Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, sharp and unimpressed. You're telling me you lost the one thing the giant alien robots need to save the planet? Brilliant. Not now, Naruto snapped under his breath, yanking open his dresser drawers even though he knew the bag wouldn't be there. Everything okay in there, honey? Judy's voice came from the other side of the door. Naruto jumped, slamming the drawer shut. Yeah, Mom, just cleaning up, it's a mess in here. There was a pause before she responded, well, hurry it up, and don't forget to clean that mud downstairs. Got it, Naruto called back, forcing his voice to stay steady. As soon as her footsteps receded, he let out a shaky breath and resumed his search. Where could it be? He muttered, tearing through the closet now. Think, kid, Kurama interjected, his tone exasperated. Where's the last place you actually saw it? Naruto froze, his hand still buried in a pile of hoodies. His mind raced, retracing his steps. The last time I saw it was downstairs, he muttered aloud. And you didn't think to double-check before running up here? Kurama sneered. Not helping, Naruto hissed, running a hand through his hair, as he slowly began to calm. Just then, a faint thud from outside snapped him out of his thoughts. He darted to the window and peeked through the blinds. Below, Michaela was standing near Bumblebee, clearly impatient. The other Autobots were spread out, their massive forms awkwardly attempting to remain inconspicuous in his suburban neighborhood. His dad's fountain was completely destroyed, the dirt and patchwork in the backyard, turned up, and ripped out by giant footsteps, and at some point, he could have sworn he saw Mojo pee on Ironhide. This was all just a bit too much, and to make it worse, Michaela was brought up by Optimus's hand, pushing her through the big window as she sat uncomfortably. They really want those glasses, she explained with a small bit of annoyance. This went unregistered to Naruto as he tried to take in everything. Naruto stared at Michaela, now awkwardly seated on the edge of his windowsill, her arms crossed as she shot him a look that screamed, seriously? He opened his mouth to respond, but another loud metallic thud from outside made him flinch. He darted back to the window just in time to see Ironhide stepping on what was once his mom's prized flowerbed. The Autobot grimaced slightly, muttering something to Bumblebee, who beeped indignantly in response. This is not happening, Naruto whispered, his hand gripping the windowsill. His brain struggled to keep up with the sight of giant robots practically trashing his backyard while trying to remain stealthy. What's the holdup? Michaela snapped, waving a hand in front of his face. You said you'd find the glasses, they're kind of important. They're downstairs, Naruto mumbled, still staring out the window. His gaze shifted to his dad's beloved fountain, now a pile of rubble. A nervous chuckle escaped him. Oh man, I'm so dead. No kidding, Michaela muttered, adjusting her position on the windowsill. Also, you might want to move a little faster, they're not exactly subtle. Naruto groaned, running a hand down his face. Okay, just give me a second. A low growl from Kurama echoed in his mind. I don't know what's funnier, your parents finding out about me, or them seeing what's outside. Neither, Naruto hissed under his breath. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from downstairs, followed by his dad's voice yelling, "What the heck was that?" Naruto froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Oh no, he whispered, his mind racing. He turned to Michaela. Stay here. I'll handle it. Handle what? Michaela asked again, her tone sharp with skepticism. Everything, Naruto snapped, glancing toward her before shifting his focus back to the window. His nerves were fraying fast, and the sight of Ironhide casually stomping through what was left of his backyard wasn't helping. Naruto rapped his knuckles lightly on the window, catching the Autobots' attention. "Hey," he hissed, his voice low but urgent. "This isn't hiding, guys, can you, I don't know, fall back or something, maybe not stomp around like elephants in a glass shop?" Optimus, towering in the distance, tilted his head slightly before nodding to the others. "Autobots, regroup," he commanded. The giant robots began to shift further into the shadows, their movements as cautious as their size allowed, though the damage had already been done. Naruto sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Okay, that's slightly better, still terrible, but I'll take it." Michaela, still perched on his windowsill, crossed her arms. "You think that's going to stop your parents from hearing them? They're not exactly subtle, Naruto." "No. But it might buy me a little time," Naruto muttered, turning back toward the door. "Just stay here, and try not to make any noise, okay?" Michaela raised an eyebrow but said nothing as Naruto slipped out of the room and quietly made his way down the stairs. He paused halfway, listening to the faint hum of voices from the living room. His dad's unmistakable grumbling carried through the house, mixing with the occasional barks from Mojo. When Naruto stepped into the room, he saw his dad, Ron, peering out the window with a flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness outside, though thankfully, the Autobots had moved just far enough into the shadows to avoid detection. "What's going on out there?" Ron asked, his voice sharp. "Feels like the house is shaking." Naruto forced a laugh, trying to look interested. He moved forward. "Oh, you know, probably just some large animal, maybe some rich guy let loose his elephant." Before Ron could respond, the lights flickered briefly before going out completely, plunging the house into darkness. "Great," Ron murmured, crossing his arms and glancing out the window. "Just perfect, power's out now too." "What's next, locusts?" Naruto froze, his heart pounding. He didn't need to guess who was responsible for the sudden blackout. His mind raced as he tried to think of a way to manage the situation. "Damn," Naruto muttered under his breath, glancing toward the stairs. "Why'd they have to do this now? I should just grab the bag and get out of here before this gets worse." Ron turned toward him, squinting suspiciously in the dim light. "What was that?" "Nothing, Dad," Naruto said quickly, waving his hand. Maybe it's the whole block, could just be a transformer, blowing out." Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, dripping with sarcasm. "Oh yeah. Transformer blew out, that's not ironic at all." Ron just looked at him confused, practically questioning his actions since he first stepped in the house, but he couldn't say anything, because as soon as the blonde had a chance, he fled to the dining room. Naruto rummaged frantically through his bag, his fingers finally closing around the glasses. Relief washed over him as he pulled them out. "Finally," he muttered, holding them up. Just as he turned to leave, a voice called out from the hallway, sending his heart plummeting. "Ron, you'll never guess what, or who, I just found upstairs." Naruto froze, the glasses slipping from his grip back into the bag. His mom's voice was unmistakable, and the distinct sound of footsteps descending the stairs sent a wave of dread through him. Before he could react, Judy stepped into the dining room, dragging a very uncomfortable-looking Michaela by the wrist. "Mom," Naruto blurted, panic written all over his face. "What is going on here?" Ron appeared right behind Judy, his flashlight beam landing directly on Michaela, who gave an awkward little wave. Hi," Michaela said, her voice small but tinged with embarrassment. Judy planted her hands on her hips, looking positively gleeful. "I found her hiding in the upstairs hallway." "Naruto, you didn't tell us you had a girl over." Naruto groaned, his face flushing red as his dad turned to him, one eyebrow raised in suspicion. "Is this why you've been sneaking around and acting weird?" Ron asked, his tone accusatory. "No, It's not like that, Naruto protested, stepping forward. She's not, this isn't. Oh, don't be shy, Judy interrupted, giving Michaela a once-over with a proud smile. She's lovely, Naruto, I always knew you'd find a nice girl, eventually. Mom, Naruto exclaimed, his hands flying up in exasperation. Michaela gave an apologetic shrug, clearly regretting her decision to step inside. Ron crossed his arms, his gaze flicking between Naruto and Michaela. If she's not your girlfriend, then why is she here? Before Naruto could come up with an excuse, a low rumble echoed from outside, only this time near the front. The sounds of cars pulling up made almost a wave of annoyance, and the sound of opening and shutting doors followed them. What was that? Ron asked, already moving toward the window. Ron pulled back the curtain and peered outside. His eyes widened as sleek, black SUVs lined the street, their glossy exteriors reflecting the dim glow of the neighborhood streetlights. Men and women in dark suits and sunglasses stepped out in unison, their movements precise and professional. What in the world, Ron muttered, his voice a mix of confusion and suspicion. Judy leaned over his shoulder, gasping, Ron, are we being audited? Is this about your taxes? I told you to stop claiming the koi pond as a business expense. Naruto's eyebrows furrowed, his eyes focused as his heart began to pound in his chest. Oh, crap, he muttered under his breath, stepping closer instinctively, knowing something was up, figuring it was just gonna be another thing after another. Before anyone could react further, a sharp knock came at the front door. The kind of knock that wasn't asking for permission but demanding attention. Ron shot Naruto a suspicious look. You didn't do anything, did you? No, Naruto said quickly, though his mind was racing. Judy hurried toward the door. Wait, Judy, Ron started, but she was already opening it. Standing in the doorway was a tall, imposing man in a black suit and tie. His expression was unreadable, and he held up a badge in one hand. Good evening, Mrs. Wickety, he said in a calm, authoritative voice. It's Witwicky, Ron corrected, butting in front of his wife protectively. What is this, who are you? The man seemingly ignored the comment, his gaze shifting past them to Ron and then Judy. We are the government, Sector 7, he said quickly, pulling up his badge. Never heard of it, responded Ron, his fist starting to clench. Never will, said the man dismissively, pulling down his arm making the badge disappear. This is a well of national security. There was a report of a stolen car around this area that happened to be your son's, and we would like to question him as he went after it. National security, Judy exclaimed, clutching her chest. Naruto, what did you do? Naruto answered a quick nothing, but kept his eye on the man in the suit, quickly throwing him in an untrustworthy category. The blonde could feel something was off, and he wasn't ready to just go down quietly. Naruto positioned himself in front of his parents, making sure he was between them and the so-called agent before he could speak again. He stepped forward, his blue eyes narrowed, his usual carefree attitude replaced by a rare intensity. The blonde's eyes began to scan everything about the man, before speaking to him in a low tone. Listen, Naruto said firmly, his voice steady but laced with irritation and concentration. I don't know what you think you're looking for, but barging into my house and scaring my family, that's not gonna fly. The man smirked, clearly unimpressed by the teenager's bravado. Kid, this isn't up for debate, this is a national security matter, one of which we think you specifically are a part of. Now, unless you want us to escalate this, escalate, Naruto cut him off, taking a step closer. You mean, like you're not already escalating? Look, I don't know who you people think you are, but you're not gonna come in here, treat my parents like suspects, and act like I'm just gonna roll over for you. Michaela blinked, surprised by his tone but also slightly impressed. She stepped up beside him, her arms crossed. The man raised a hand, and then waved forward signaling his agents to go to the backyard. This didn't go unnoticed by Judy or Ron. They would have gone to stop the other agents, but they were quickly stopped by more agents. The ones in the backyard began to tear out anything, flowers, grass, and Naruto was unaware of exactly what they were doing. "Kid, I don't think you understand what's at stake here. You need to come with us for questioning," the first agent said, his tone sharp and annoyed as he fixed his gaze on Naruto. Before Naruto could respond, Ron and Judy stepped in front of the two teens, their protective instincts kicking in. Somehow, the entire confrontation had shifted to the living room, where agents were rifling through drawers and cabinets like it was their personal property. The faint sounds of more agents tearing up the backyard made the situation feel even more invasive. "You're not taking my son anywhere," Ron growled, his hands clenched into fists. His furrowed brow mirrored Naruto's, and his tone was firm. "Something's not right about all this, and I don't trust you. What's the deal with all these people tearing up my house?" The lead agent smirked, clearly unimpressed by Ron's attempt to stand his ground. "Oh, I get it, you think you're clever," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "But here's the thing, I think you're the one hiding something. This whole setup smells fishy, your son, his girlfriend, your little Taco Bell dog. The whole operation stinks. But that's fine, because you answer to me." He was abruptly cut off when one of his subordinates leaned in and whispered something in his ear. Naruto caught a faint murmur of the exchange but couldn't make out the details. The smirk vanished from the agent's face, replaced by a flicker of something serious. "Direct contact," he muttered under his breath, narrowing his eyes as he processed the information. "We need confirmation." The agent nodded at one of his subordinates, who quickly handed him a device, a strange machine with a small, box-like attachment connected by wires. Before Naruto could react, two agents stepped forward and pulled him out from behind Ron and Judy. "Hey, let go of him," Ron shouted, but his protests were ignored. The lead agent brought the device to Naruto's chest, holding it steady as everyone in the room watched. For a moment, there was only silence, then the machine lit up, its beeping growing louder and faster until it was a near-constant screech. The smirk returned to the agent's face, now sharper and more triumphant. "That's all the confirmation I need," he said, stepping back. "Take them all away." Naruto sat in the van, his arms crossed and his expression locked in an annoyed glare. Michaela sat beside him, her face tense, while Simmons leaned forward from his seat across from them, his smirk as punchable as ever. The agent's voice cut through the silence like nails on a chalkboard. "Last night, a station reported to us of a car that transformed near a junkyard. You know anything about that?" The lead agent said, his tone dripping with mockery. Naruto raised an eyebrow, leaning back with forced nonchalance. "Oh yeah, that sounds about right, my car transformed, you got me," he replied dryly. "Next, you'll say it did a tap dance and flew to the moon." Simmons tilted his head, clearly unimpressed. "Really? Really?" Naruto shot back. "Maybe I hit my head, or maybe you're just bad at your job." Michaela jumped in, trying to defuse the situation. "They were confused," she said, her tone light but a little strained. "They had to be, I mean, cars don't just get up and, yeah," Naruto added quickly, his lips quirking into a sarcastic grin, "because that'd be crazy. Right?" The man leaned in closer, his smirk growing wider. "Hilarious, huh? So, tell me, what do you kids know about aliens?" Naruto's smile vanished, he stared back at the agent, unimpressed. "Oh, you mean like the little green guys in saucers, or the creepy ones with the tentacles? Sorry, Agent Sci-Fi, but you're barking up the wrong tree." "It's just an urban legend," Michaela interjected, trying to steer the conversation away from dangerous territory. "Yup," Naruto said, nodding sagely, "right up there with Bigfoot and you winning any charm contests." The man chuckled darkly and pulled out his badge, flashing it in their faces. "You see this? This is my, I can do whatever I want and get away with it, badge." Naruto leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes narrowing. "Yeah, must be nice having a badge to make up for your personality." The agent's smirk tightened. "Cute, keep running that mouth of yours, kid, I could lock you up forever." Michaela rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, please. Don't listen to him, Naruto, he's just mad he had to leave guarding the food court to play with the big kids." The man's face darkened as he turned to Michaela. "You, in the training bra, don't test me," he snapped, his gaze sharpened, and his voice dropped to a more menacing tone, "especially with your daddy's parole coming up." Naruto's eyes flicked to Michaela, confused. "Parole," he repeated, glancing between her and the agent. "It's nothing," Michaela said quickly, her voice tight. "Oh, it's something," the man cut in gleefully. "Grand Theft Auto isn't nothing, sweetheart, you know, those cars your dad used to teach you to fix, they weren't always his, were they?" Naruto's fists clenched as he shot Simmons a glare. "Hey, why don't you quit hiding behind your badge and say something that's actually useful," he snapped, "like telling me where my parents are." Simmons ignored him, his grin widening as he turned back to Michaela. "She's got her own juvie record to prove it, isn't that right, daddy's little car thief? She's a criminal, criminals are hot. It's a shame if he had to rot in jail for the rest of his life. Though." Michaela's face flushed with anger and shame. Naruto didn't miss the way her hands trembled slightly. His jaw tightened, and he shot to his feet, leaning forward in Simmons' face. "You think you're tough, huh? Flashing that badge around like it makes you something. You wanna talk big? How about you tell me where you took my parents?" Simmons blinked, momentarily caught off guard by Naruto's intensity. But his smirk returned quickly, and he leaned back in his seat. "I'm not at liberty to discuss." Naruto grabbed the front of Simmons' jacket, pulling him forward even with his cuffed hands. "Don't give me that crap, where are they? Touching a federal agent is a felony." Simmons sneered, though his voice wavered slightly. "Yeah, well, threatening innocent people isn't exactly winning you any points either," Naruto shot back, his voice cold. "You wanna play hardball, let's play." Before the lead agent could respond, the van jerked to a sudden stop, throwing everyone forward. The sound of heavy metal footsteps echoed outside, and the air seemed to hum with an unseen energy. The van's top wrenched open, and Optimus Prime's massive frame came into view, his glowing optics locking onto the humans inside. His deep, resonant voice filled the air. "Taking the children was a bad move." The lead agent stared up at the towering Autobot, his face pale and slack with shock. However, his subordinates in the other vans were quick and ready, pulling up different guns to point at the giant. "Autobots," Optimus commanded, "relieve them of their weapons." As Ironhide, Jazz, and the others moved into action, Naruto crossed his arms, his grin widening as he watched Simmons scramble to keep his composure. Soon none of the agents had any sort of way to defend themselves. Instead, all the weapons had been swept up by Jazz without any trouble. "Guess that badge doesn't work on giant alien robots, huh?" Naruto quipped, his tone dripping with satisfaction. Optimus Prime's towering frame cast a long shadow over Simmons, who stood stiffly by the van. The faint hum of the Autobot's inner workings underscored the charged silence, his glowing blue optics locked onto the human before him. The sheer presence of the Autobot leader was enough to unsettle even the most confident of men, and Simmons was no exception. "You don't seem afraid," Optimus said, his deep voice rolling through the air like distant thunder. Though calm, there was an unmistakable weight to his words. "Are you not surprised to see us?" The agent straightened, his usual bravado wavering for a split second before he hastily plastered on his familiar smirk. "Look, there are S7 protocols." "Okay," he stammered, his voice cracking slightly as he gestured aimlessly. I'm not authorized to communicate with you, except to tell you that I can't communicate with you. Optimus tilted his head slightly, his imposing stance unchanging. Get out of the car, he said firmly. The man blinked, taken aback. Me, you want me to, now, Optimus commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. All right, he said quickly, scrambling to push the van door open. His movements were jerky, his usual snark momentarily overshadowed by nervousness. I'm getting out, see? From where she stood nearby, Michaela's arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her expression was worried. You weren't supposed to hear all that, she muttered, not knowing what else to say. Naruto gave a reassuring smile. It's not my business whatever you did before we met. I brought you along this ride, so we have to stick together. Michaela smiled at this, her expression turning almost loving before it quickly shifted to serious. The two teens then made their way towards the lead agent, finding his name to be Simmons not long after. They were able to interrogate the man, humiliating him. To both Naruto's and Michaela's amusement, they tied him up to a pole half naked, took his badge and left him and his team on the road. Naruto exchanged a glance with Michaela, his lips quirking into a faint smirk. Simmons might have the arrogance of a bureaucrat, but it was clear he wasn't used to being on the losing side of an argument. But before anyone could say more, Ironhide's voice cut through the air, sharp and urgent. Optimus, incoming, he said loudly. The mood shifted instantly as the Autobots turned their attention to the approaching threat. Simmons and his fellow agents had called for help, causing another problem that they had to get past. Their earlier confidence rapidly dissolving as the sound of helicopter blades filled the air. Autobots, roll out, Optimus ordered, his voice ringing with authority. Naruto felt his pulse quicken as the situation escalated once more. The Autobots shifted into their vehicle forms, rolling away to get cover, while Optimus put Naruto and Michaela on his shoulder, and moved off. The chaos erupted as the sound of approaching helicopters grew louder, the thrum of their blades slicing through the tense air. Naruto's heart raced as he clung to Optimus Prime's shoulder, Michaela holding on tightly beside him. The ground rumbled beneath them as the Autobots moved, their massive forms shifting into vehicle mode with the familiar symphony of mechanical clicks and whirs. Hang on, Optimus said, his deep voice steady despite the mounting tension. His massive stride carried him swiftly toward cover, each step reverberating through Naruto's chest. Naruto glanced down at the scene below. Simmons and his team scrambled into action, shouting orders and signaling the incoming helicopters. The agents clearly hadn't expected their situation to spiral so quickly. What's the plan? Naruto shouted, trying to keep his voice steady as Optimus ducked behind a cluster of trees for cover. Remain calm, Optimus replied, we must avoid unnecessary casualties. As the Prime said this, he moved through the road, dodging lights of the helicopters while also making cracks in the road. A clear map was probably painted in the robot's mind. Naruto could tell as much when the thing was making sharp turns without falter. This eventually led the three under a bridge, hiding themselves from the helicopters the best they can as the hung from the ceiling. Naruto repositioned himself, trying to move up to make sure he wouldn't fall to his death. He then helped Michaela do the same. The rumble of helicopters echoed ominously above as Optimus Prime clung to the underside of the bridge, his massive frame moving with surprising precision. Naruto shifted carefully on the Autobot's shoulder, his fingers gripping tightly onto the edge of a metal plate to steady himself. Hold on tight, Optimus instructed, his voice low but steady. Naruto glanced at Michaela, who was gripping his arm tightly for balance. Her face was pale, but her determination shone through. You okay? He asked softly, his voice carrying over the distant drone of the aircraft. She nodded quickly, her breath uneven. I'm fine, just not used to hanging over a drop like this. Naruto offered a reassuring grin, though he felt his own pulse racing. "You're doing great, just don't look down." Michaela gave a weak laugh, too late for that advice. The bridge trembled slightly as Optimus adjusted his grip, positioning himself more securely against the structure. Naruto used the moment to shift as well, reaching out to help Michaela find a sturdier hold. "Careful," Naruto muttered, steadying her as she leaned against Optimus's armor. But as Michaela moved her foot onto one of Optimus's smokestacks, it slipped. Her gasp pierced the air as she lost her footing entirely. "Michaela," Naruto shouted, lunging to grab her. His fingers closed around her wrist, but her momentum dragged him forward, pulling them both off balance. Naruto yelled again, his grip on Michaela tightening as they both plummeted toward the ground below. Optimus turned sharply, his hand moving too late to catch them. The world spun as Naruto and Michaela fell, the wind rushing past them. And in the moment, neither of the teens noticed how they lost the glasses when falling. Suddenly, a familiar yellow blur shot upward. Bumblebee transformed midair, his arms outstretched. With a metallic clang, Bumblebee caught the pair just before they hit the ground. His servos whirred as he cradled them close, absorbing the force of their fall. Naruto groaned, looking up at Bumblebee's glowing optics. "Close one, B," he muttered, his heart pounding. Michaela clung to Naruto, her breath shaky. "Thanks, Bumblebee." Bumblebee chirped in response, his tone reassuring, but the moment of relief didn't last long. The sound of roaring engines and heavy boots echoed around them. Naruto's head snapped toward the noise, his stomach sinking as black SUVs screeched to a halt nearby. A dozen armed agents, clad in Sector 7 uniforms, poured out, weapons raised. The tense moment shattered as an agent barked into a radio, "We've got them." Naruto and Michaela barely had a chance to process what was happening before a swarm of armed Sector 7 agents rushed them. Hands gripped their arms tightly, yanking them away from Bumblebee, who let out a garbled electronic protest as his systems flickered. "Let us go," Michaela shouted, struggling against the agents. Naruto twisted in their grip, his face contorted with frustration. "Get your hands off me," he growled, but his strength was no match for their numbers. Bumblebee let out a pained squeal as the agents moved into position around him. Canisters were quickly unloaded from one of the black SUVs, their tops twisted open to release dense clouds of freezing vapor. "No," Naruto yelled as he realized what they were doing. The agents had armed themselves with funnels attached to the canisters, directing the icy streams toward Bumblebee's joints. The yellow Autobot thrashed, his servos whirring in protest, but the frost rapidly overtook him. His movements slowed as his limbs stiffened, his metal frame coated in a thin layer of ice. "Stop it," Michaela screamed, her voice cracking, "You're hurting him." Naruto's fists clenched, his body shaking with rage. "You cowards," he shouted, "he's not even fighting back." Simmons stepped forward, his face smug as he crossed his arms. "That's the point, kid, he's a machine, not your buddy." He turned to his men, "Keep the freeze going, I want this thing immobilized." Naruto lunged toward Simmons, but an agent slammed the butt of his rifle into his stomach, knocking the air out of him. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath as Michaela cried out in protest. "You'll regret this," Naruto rasped, glaring up at Simmons, his eyes blazing with fury. Simmons crouched to Naruto's level, his smirk growing. "Oh, I don't think so, you and your friend are coming with us. And as for that thing," he gestured at Bumblebee, who was now out cold, his frame locked in a defensive, his body still twitching the little it could. "We'll see what makes him tick." Naruto's mind raced as he and Michaela were dragged toward one of the SUVs. He glanced back at Bumblebee, his heart sinking at the sight of his frozen friend. Optimus, Naruto whispered under his breath, hoping the Autobot leader would intervene. But Optimus stood still in the shadows beneath the bridge, his glowing blue optics fixed on the scene. He didn't move, his towering frame motionless as the agents completed their operation. Naruto's heart twisted in anger and confusion. Why wasn't Optimus doing anything? Why wasn't anyone helping? Michaela's voice broke through his thoughts. Naruto, she said softly, her eyes wide with fear, what are we going to do? Naruto looked at her, his jaw tightening as he was shoved into the back of the SUV. We'll figure something out, he promised, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. The doors slammed shut, and the convoy of black SUVs roared to life, speeding away from the scene. Time skip. As the helicopter hummed steadily through the air, Naruto glanced across the cabin, his gaze falling on the two strangers sitting in front of him. One was a woman with sharp, inquisitive eyes, Maggie, he'd heard her name was. Beside her sat a man who looked equal parts anxious and intrigued, Glenn, if he remembered correctly. The silence in the cabin was heavy, broken only by the occasional static from the agents' radios. Then, with an awkward cough, Glenn leaned forward slightly, his curiosity getting the better of him. So, Glenn began hesitantly, looking between Naruto and Michaela, what did they, get you for? Maggie arched an eyebrow at the question but didn't interrupt, clearly interested in hearing the answer herself. Naruto exchanged a glance with Michaela, who rolled her eyes and leaned back in her seat. He sighed, running a hand through his hair before responding, I bought a car. He paused for effect, his tone deadpan, turned out to be an alien robot. Glenn's mouth fell open slightly, and he mouthed a silent wow before shaking his head in disbelief. Who knew, right? Naruto added dryly. Leaning back and crossing his arms, Michaela smirked faintly beside him, though the tension in her shoulders remained. Maggie leaned forward, her interest piqued. Wait, you're telling me you had a direct encounter with one of them, like, up close? Naruto nodded, more than one, and trust me, it's not as fun as it sounds. Before Maggie could press further, Glenn chimed in, gesturing animatedly, okay, but that's, like, insane. I mean, I hacked into some stuff and got in trouble, sure, but you're out here driving alien robots, dude, that's next level. Michaela scoffed, giving Glenn a pointed look, yeah, and now they're freezing him solid and dragging us to who knows where, real, next level. The mood in the cabin shifted again, the weight of the situation settling over them. Maggie frowned, her earlier curiosity giving way to concern. They're taking us to Sector 7, Maggie said quietly, almost to herself, a place so secret no one outside of the government even knows it exists. Naruto's eyes narrowed, what's their deal, what do they even want with us? Maggie hesitated, glancing at Glenn before answering, from what I've pieced together, they've been tracking alien activity on Earth for decades. If they brought us in, it's because we've been too close to the action. Or because they think we know something they don't, Michaela added bitterly. Naruto stared at the floor, his mind racing. He thought of Bumblebee, trapped and helpless, and his fists tightened. They won't get away with this, he muttered under his breath. Maggie gave him a curious look, you sound pretty confident. Naruto's eyes flicked up to meet hers, a glint of determination in his gaze. Let's just say, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. The helicopter began its descent, the hum of the engines changing pitch. A voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their arrival at Sector 7. As the massive, fortified facility came into view, Naruto felt the weight of what was ahead. Naruto and a small group of people stepped forward. The blonde quickly guessed that this was the group filled with people who had interactions similar to his own. As these thoughts filled his mind, Simmons, the agent who had brought him in, walked towards him, his voice chipper despite the tension. "Hey, kid, I think we got off to a bad start, huh? You must be hungry. You want a latte, ho ho, double venti macchiato?" Naruto shot him a flat look, one eyebrow raised, his arms crossed over his chest as he glanced at Michaela, who gave him an exasperated look in return. "Latte? Seriously, you're offering me a fancy drink while we're stuck in the middle of whatever this is? I'll pass." Banachek, a sharp-eyed Sector 7 agent, didn't respond, but his gaze was firm, unwavering. "Listen, kid, people can die here. I need you to focus and tell us everything you know. Right now." Naruto's gaze sharpened, and he leaned forward slightly. The casual demeanor he'd been wearing slipped just a little, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. "People can die, huh? Guess that's one way to make someone talk. But if you think you're gonna scare me into telling you everything, you're gonna be disappointed." Banachek didn't react, but the stern look on his face stayed fixed. Simmons chuckled under his breath, clearly enjoying the interaction, though he kept quiet. "Just follow, we'll talk about your car," Banachek said, turning on his heel. "Hey, that's not all I want. I'll also take my parents' location and Michaela's juvenile records while you're at it," Naruto stated quickly, not letting the agent leave his sight. Michaela sighed in relief, giving Naruto a grateful smile before following him. "Man's an extortionist," Simmons muttered, shaking his head as he followed behind. They walked through narrow hallways, their footsteps echoing. Naruto couldn't shake the feeling of being on display. The whole place felt wrong. "Alright, here's the deal, you've all had direct contact with the NBEs, Simmons said, glancing over his shoulder. "NBEs," came the confused reply from Epps, a soldier that stayed close to someone in a similar get-up as him. "Non-biological extraterrestrials, try and keep up with the acronyms," Simmons added, the sarcasm thick in his tone. Banachek nodded in agreement, his eyes sharp as he motioned for them to keep moving. "What you're about to see is totally classified," Simmons added, leading them further into the facility. Naruto's eyes flicked to the technicians at their stations, the air buzzing with activity. The hum of computers and machinery filled the space as they walked deeper into the facility. "Dear God, what is this?" came a soft exclamation from up ahead. Keller, the military leader, had been following quietly until now, his voice full of disbelief. Banachek didn't miss a beat. "We think when he made his approach over the North Pole, our gravitational field messed with his telemetry. He crashed in the ice, probably thousands of years ago. We brought him here to this facility in 1934. Simmons spoke up again, voice full of a strange pride. "We call him NBE-1. Naruto's gaze shifted to the massive frozen figure, a cold shiver running down his spine. He narrowed his eyes, already knowing what the others might not. "Yes, but no, that's Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons," Naruto said flatly. Banachek raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback, but said nothing. Simmons didn't seem fazed at all. "He's been in cryostasis since 1935, your great-great-grandfather made one of the greatest discoveries in history," Banachek explained. "Fact is, you're looking at the source of the modern age. Microchips, lasers, spaceflight, cars, all reverse-engineered by studying him. NB1. That's what we call him," Simmons added. A low murmur ran through the group as they all stopped in front of the enormous, frozen figure. Keller's voice cut through the silence, disbelief in his tone. "And you didn't think the United States military might need to know you're keeping a hostile alien robot frozen in the basement?" Banachek's expression remained unchanged. "Until these events, we had no credible threat to national security." "Well, you've got one now," Keller replied, glancing at the others. Lennox, folding his arms as he stood off to one side, spoke next. He was another soldier with a sharp mind and a level-headed approach. But there was a hint of tension in his voice. So why Earth? Naruto exhaled slowly, his gaze lingering on Megatron's frozen form. He had seen enough to know what was coming. They're here for the All-Spark, a cube that can do all sorts of crazy shit. If you're lucky, you'll find out soon enough. Keller looked confused, the pieces not yet clicking for him. All-Spark? What is that? Naruto's gaze hardened, and his voice dropped into a tone of quiet certainty. It's a cube they're after. It's got the power to transform everything, turn human technology into an army they can use to take over the universe. It's why they came here, and they're not gonna stop until they find it. Simmons chuckled, his voice light but skeptical. And you're sure about that? Naruto glanced at him, his expression serious. You're asking me like I don't know what I'm talking about. They'll destroy anything in their path to get to that cube. Banachek gave him a pointed look, then nodded, turning on his heel. Follow me, Banachek said. Simmons smiled, clearly amused. You're about to see our crown jewel. Naruto raised an eyebrow but said nothing, following them deeper into the facility. The tension was palpable as they moved through the narrow hallways. They eventually found themselves in a large room, looking to be some sort of office with a window to the side. Out of the window the All-Spark could be seen in all its glory. A cube, larger than anything Naruto has seen yet, with alien text written all over it, just so happened to be in the position of the people the blonde was running away from. Carbon dating puts the cube here around 10,000 BC, the first 7 didn't find it until 1913, they knew it was alien because of the matching hieroglyphics on the cube as well as NBE1. President Hoover had the dam built around it, 4 football fields thick of concrete. A perfect way to hide its energy from being detected by anyone, or any alien species. On the outside, Banachek explained, letting all of them see the object that seemed almost impossible. Maggie's eyes narrowed as she processed Banachek's earlier statement, her voice laced with confusion. Wait, back up, you said the dam hides the cube's energy, what kind exactly? Banachek didn't miss a beat, guiding everyone to leave the room to go towards the next. Good question, please step inside, we'll need to lock the door to proceed. Glenn's eyes widened as he followed, looking at everything with wide-eyed wonder. Oh, wow. Epps shook his head, the corner of his mouth tugging up slightly as he examined the strange surroundings. What's that, Freddy Krueger done been up in here or something? Glenn, ever the character, scoffed and shot back with a grin. Oh, no, man. Freddy Krueger has 4 blades, that's only 3, that's Wolverine. He laughed, mimicking a claw swipe. Right, that's Wolverine. Simmons was quick to chime in with his usual sarcasm, his eyes scanning the group as he tried to make light of the situation. That's very funny. Anybody have any mechanical devices on them? BlackBerry, key alarm, cell phone. Glenn proudly raised a hand. I got a phone, he said, a bit too eagerly. Simmons' lips curled into a knowing smile. Ooh, Nokias are real nasty, you've got to respect the Japanese. They know the way of the samurai, he said before placing the phone inside a glass box that was hooked up to cords. Maggie frowned slightly, rolling her eyes. Nokia's from Finland. Keller, walking alongside them, gave a slight nod in agreement but had a bemused look on his face. Yes, but he's, well, you know, a little strange. Simmons waved it off dismissively, gesturing to the box. We're able to take the cube's radiation and funnel it into that box. Naruto, standing at the back, eyed the technology with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. He was used to strange tech, but this felt different, more ominous. The group's reaction confirmed his suspicion. Glenn, Sam, and Michaela all let out short, surprised yelps as a loud, mechanical whirring filled the air. Suddenly, a small robot, resembling an old Nokia phone, came to life, chatting in a language that no one understood. It cried in Cybertronian, its little arms flailing with unrestrained energy. Simmons, smiling at the reaction of everyone else, gave a small laugh. Mean little sucker, right? The robot chirped in its strange language again, bouncing around in a seemingly erratic pattern. It did this before shooting the glass directly. Maggie raised an eyebrow, clearly unsettled. That thing is freaky. Simmons gave a sly grin, clearly amused by their reactions, kind of like the itty-bitty Energizer bunny from hell, huh? The Nokia robot suddenly chirped again, as if to confirm Simmons' words, and the group flinched at its intensity. It shot a missile into the glass, cracking it, but the robot wasn't done. It squawked in a language none of them could comprehend before charging forward as it began to break the box holding the cube's radiation. Simmons cursed under his breath as the little machine struggled. "Oh, he's breaking the box," he said unimpressed. He then clicked a button on the box, killing the Nokia transformer with a zap. The sudden tremor in the room and the flickering lights grabbed everyone's attention, the air crackling with tension. Keller's voice broke through the silence. "Gentlemen, they know the cube is here." Banachek's eyes narrowed. He then moved to the phone to contact someone in S7. "This is Banachek, what's going on out there?" An S7 technician's voice was quick and nervous. "The NBE-1 hangars lost power, and the backup generator isn't enough." Banachek whipped around in alarm. "What?" The technician continued, "The situation worsening, we can't keep up with the power drain, it's too much." Lennox stepped forward, eyes scanning the room quickly. "Do you have an arms room?" Without missing a beat, Banachek gestured for them to follow. As they moved down the hall, Naruto's mind raced. He couldn't ignore the nagging thought that he needed to get to his car. Bumblebee somewhere hidden in Sector 7, he had to find a way to help him. But he knew better than to rush into things. He stayed focused, but the idea of getting to friend, of possibly helping the Autobots, kept pulling at him. The lights flickered again, the hum of the facility's machinery growing faint. The tension in the air was thick, and Naruto's stomach churned. It felt like everything was on the verge of collapsing. Once they got to the arms room, Naruto directly went toward Simmons. "You have to take me to Bumblebee," he said, urgency leaking into his tone. The man almost laughed, until realization seemingly came over him. "No way," came the quick response, shooting Naruto down. "I don't know what would happen if I just let that thing go." Naruto's eyes narrowed, annoyance getting to him as walked closer. "He is bound to know more about that cube than any of us here. He could help us make sure the Decepticons don't get their hands on it." "No way, Blondie, not happening. Now go over there and hide like a good teen." Naruto was quick to cut the man off. "Having been sick and tired of him since they first met, you act like it would be good for us to leave an asset to just die." "The answer is no," Simmons tried to say, but quickly he was pressed against an assault vehicle by Lennox with minimal effort. A pistol pressed against the man's chest, and now it seemed like everyone in the room was pointing their weapons at each other. "Show the kid to his car," Lennox said, his tone full of annoyance that reminded Naruto of himself. This was when Keller spoke up, his commanding tone in the moment surprising most. "You should really do what these men say. It doesn't seem like they are up to just talking with you," the older male said slyly. Bumblebee's pained electronic moaning filled the room as Naruto and Michaela approached. The freezing process had begun, and the sound of heavy machinery echoed through the hangar. The Autobot was stuck, unable to move, and the temperature continued to drop. "Stop, you've got to stop," Naruto's voice cut through the tension. He rushed forward, hands raised in protest as the freezing machinery hummed menacingly. He wasn't about to let them turn Bumblebee into an ice sculpture. The S7 agent in charge hesitated, glancing at his commander. "Sir, I..." "Stop the freezing," Naruto snapped, his eyes narrowing. "Let him go." Simmons, standing off to the side, raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. He seemed more focused on the machinery than the people around him. Bumblebee's sensors flickered, a weak growl escaping his vocal processors, but the pain was clear. "Bumblebee, listen to me, you're not alone, we're getting you out of here," Naruto said, his tone softening as he approached the struggling bot. "These guys don't understand you, but I do." Bumblebee's optics flickered, a brief spark of recognition. The Autobot shifted slightly, trying to move, but the freezing technology still held him in place. Naruto's fists clenched. "Come on, we can't let this happen, you need to trust me," he urged, before he turned to Simmons. "We need to get him to the All-Spark, that's the only way to keep the Decepticons from getting their hands on it." Bumblebee's movements slowed as the freezing process ceased, the hum of the machinery stopping abruptly. Simmons stepped back, and Naruto quickly helped the boy up, guiding him along with the others toward the All-Spark. As Bumblebee took in the sight of the giant cube, it seemed almost overwhelming in its size. The massive artifact made Bumblebee look small in comparison, but he didn't hesitate. His arms rose, his servos whirring as he activated something unknown to everyone around him. For a brief moment, the All-Spark seemed to pulse with energy. Then, as if reacting to Bumblebee's signal, the cube began to shift. Sections folded into themselves with precise, almost mechanical movements. Slots slid and interlocked, reducing the cube's size, until, in a matter of seconds, it fit perfectly in Bumblebee's hand, its energy now contained in something small and portable. Lennox stepped forward, his voice carrying authority as he addressed the group. "Listen up," he commanded. "We're not staying here, Megatron's hangar is just on the other side, and he's thawing quickly, we can't risk getting caught, we've got to get that cube out of here." Naruto exchanged a glance with Bumblebee. A silent understanding passing between them. They knew what was at stake. Bumblebee let out a hopeful electronic hum, transforming into his sleek car form. The engine purred to life as he prepared for the next phase of the mission. "Let's move," Naruto said with quiet but steely determination as he slid into the driver's seat, Michaela right beside him. With the cube secured and their path clear, it was time to head for Mission City. The sunlight filtered in through the windows of Bumblebee, casting warm beams across the car's interior. The steady hum of the engine beneath him felt like a familiar lullaby, and before long, Naruto's eyelids grew heavy. The car drove on, moving forward, being followed protectively by attack vehicles. The long night had taken its toll, and as much as he tried to stay awake, his body succumbed to exhaustion. He leaned back, closing his eyes, and let the sound of the engine and the rhythmic motion of the car carry him into a light sleep. The last thing Naruto heard before his consciousness drifted deeper into sleep was Michaela's voice, tinged with concern. "Naruto, are you okay?" That was the last straw before everything went black, and the familiar darkness of his mindscape enveloped him. He groggily opened his eyes and found himself standing in the same sewer-like place he had come to know well. It felt like the endless labyrinth of his thoughts, the one place where things never seemed right, yet always familiar. It was his mindscape. He scowled, a wave of irritation sweeping over him. Even though he'd grown used to it, the grimy, dank surroundings of the sewer never failed to rub him the wrong way. The fact that he was here again, without any warning, only added to his frustration. What he was relieved about, though, was the fact that he didn't have to walk to the cage. He knew exactly where it was, a constant fixture in his mental space, just waiting for him. Naruto crossed his arms, his frown deepening. He felt the weight of silence around him, the place eerily still. The familiar presence of Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, was notably absent. It had been a while since he'd heard anything from the beast, ever since the first encounter with Agent Simmons. "Hey, you big furball," Naruto called out, his voice ringing through the empty air, irritation dripping from every word. He waited for a few seconds, but there was no response. Just the echo of his own voice bouncing off the walls of his mind. Naruto's frown deepened, his patience wearing thin. He clenched his fists, his temper flaring as he shouted once again, "Kurama, wake up." The silence stretched on, making the air feel heavy with anticipation. Nothing. Not even the slightest movement from the cage that housed the fox's immense power. Naruto's annoyance was reaching a boiling point. "Seriously," Naruto muttered under his breath, "not even a grunt from you?" Suddenly, just as he was about to turn away, the shadows near the cage seemed to shift, a dark energy crackling in the air. The familiar rumble of Kurama's voice filled the space, low and ominous. "Kid," Kurama's voice was thick, heavy with something Naruto couldn't place. "You woke me up, what do you want now?" Naruto's heart skipped. It was strange to hear Kurama like this, like he was genuinely disturbed. "What do you mean, what do I want?" Naruto shot back, frustration in his voice. "You've been silent ever since Simmons showed up, I had to handle everything myself." Kurama's massive form shifted in the cage, his eyes glowing faintly through the bars. There was an unsettling silence before he spoke again, his tone more kind than usual. "You're about to get your memories back, Naruto. All of them. And when that happens, you'll understand everything." Naruto felt a chill run down his spine at the cryptic words. His hand instinctively reached up to touch his forehead, as if trying to grasp the meaning behind Kurama's statement. "What are you talking about?" Kurama's voice softened, but there was still an undeniable weight to his words. "The truth, your past, your true power, it's all coming back. You'll finally remember everything you've forgotten." Naruto blinked, trying to process Kurama's words. "I don't remember much," he admitted, confusion clear in his voice. "What does this mean for me now?" Kurama gave a short shrug, a smirk curling on his massive lips. "All it means, brat, is that you'll finally stop sitting around, waiting to rush in like an idiot." Naruto's brow furrowed at the remark. He looked up, surprised. "Wait, what, how did you know?" "Like I told you before," Kurama interrupted. His voice laced with smug amusement, "I can hear your thoughts, even in my sleep. Whenever you felt helpless, like when you wanted to take down those fools freezing Bumblebee, or when you felt like lashing out at Optimus for leaving you with Sector 7, I could feel it all." Naruto tensed. He remembered those moments all too well, the frustration and the helplessness gnawing at him. He opened his mouth to argue, but Kurama continued, "I felt your emotions, brat," Kurama said, his smirk deepening. "You may not realize it, but you wear your heart on your sleeve. It's just how you are, rushing in without thinking, it's in your nature." Naruto frowned, his jaw tightening. "Yeah. Well, sitting around doing nothing doesn't exactly feel great either." Kurama's eyes gleamed with amusement as he leaned forward, his massive form pressing closer to the bars of the cage. "Maybe, but now things will be different. You'll have your memories back, you'll know who you are, what you can do, you'll finally have the tools to stop feeling helpless." Naruto's breath hitched at those words. "My memories," he echoed, his voice quieter now. "So, when this happens, I'll know everything? My past, my abilities, everything?" Kurama nodded, his tone serious now. "Everything, and when you do, you'll realize just how small these Decepticons really are compared to what you can do." Naruto's eyes widened at that, his mind racing with possibilities. "You really think I can fight them, even at my size?" Kurama chuckled, the sound deep and rumbling. "You're small, but you're no ordinary brat, you've always been more than enough, and once you remember, they'll see that too. So stop doubting yourself." Naruto stared at Kurama, his thoughts swirling. The idea of having his memories, his abilities, and a clear purpose was almost overwhelming. But Kurama's words sparked something in him, a flicker of confidence he hadn't felt in a long time. "All right," Naruto finally said, determination creeping into his voice. "If what you're saying is true, I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes." Kurama smirked again, his massive eyes narrowing with approval. "That's more like it, brat. Just remember, you're not doing this alone, we're brothers. You'll remember that as soon as you wake up." Naruto nodded, his fists clenching as a surge of resolve filled him. He had no idea what was coming, but for the first time, he felt like he could face it head-on. With that thought, the mindscape began to blur and fade, pulling him back to the real world. "Don't mess it up," Kurama's voice echoed one last time, fading into the darkness. Naruto's eyes snapped open, the bright daylight flooding his vision. Bumblebee was still driving, the hum of his engine steady beneath him. Michaela turned to him. Her face etched with concern. "You all right?" she asked, her tone cautious. Naruto sat up straighter, his lips curving into a small, determined smirk. "Yeah, I'm good now." He felt it, all of it. Memories of battles fought, bonds forged, and a life lived with unrelenting determination surged back to him in vivid clarity. For a fleeting moment, it felt like he was watching someone else's life unfold, as if he were a stranger peering into the experiences of another. But then it hit him, this wasn't someone else. This was him. This was his life. Even with the flood of memories, the emotions tied to them, and the weight of what they carried, Naruto still felt grounded in the present. He wasn't the same Naruto who had lived that life before, but he wasn't entirely separate from him either. It was as though the two versions of himself had converged, creating something new, a fusion of the past and present. And yet, in this moment of clarity, he realized one important truth: he was still himself. The rush of familiarity brought him a strange sense of peace. The boy he used to be had strived for greatness, forged ahead despite overwhelming odds, and carried the hopes of so many. Now, this new version of himself could take those lessons, that strength, and apply them to this world, a world that desperately needed someone who could stand up against the chaos. Naruto smirked faintly, leaning back against Bumblebee's seat as the hum of the car engine resonated beneath him. He didn't need to be the Naruto of the past. He didn't need to emulate the memories that had returned to him. He was glad to know what he used to be, to understand the strength he carried deep within. But more importantly, he was excited for what he could become now. "What's that look for?" Michaela asked, her voice snapping him out of his thoughts. She glanced at him with a mix of curiosity and concern. Naruto turned his head toward her, the smirk still on his face. "Just thinking," he replied, his tone lighter than it had been in days. "I've got everything I need now." "Everything?" she echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," he said, looking out the window at the road ahead, his eyes reflecting a newfound determination. "Everything." Bumblebee let out an approving hum, as if he understood what Naruto meant. The road stretched on, and for the first time in a long while, Naruto felt ready for whatever lay ahead. Before Michaela could press Naruto further, a voice crackled through Bumblebee's comm system, drawing her attention while deepening Naruto's frown. "Bumblebee, do you and the humans read me?" Optimus Prime's booming voice came through clearly, calm yet commanding. Bumblebee let out a series of excited beeps in response, his entire frame seemingly lighting up as if greeting an old friend. "Glad to hear you're safe, old friend," Optimus said, his tone warm with relief. As his words ended, a deep rumble filled the air, and moments later, the imposing truck form of Optimus Prime appeared in the rearview mirror, flanked by the other Autobots. Naruto turned in his seat, his scowl deepening as the convoy approached, their mechanical forms gleaming in the daylight. Michaela noticed his expression, her curiosity piqued. "What's with the look? I thought you'd be happy to see them." Naruto crossed his arms, leaning back in his seat. "I'm not mad that they're here," he muttered, his tone clipped. "I just haven't forgotten how quick Optimus was to leave us behind with Sector 7. Feels like he didn't think twice about it." Michaela frowned, her gaze flicking to the approaching Autobots. "You think he didn't care?" Naruto shrugged. "Maybe he cared, but it sure didn't feel like it. I don't like people treating me like a liability, like I'm just a kid who can't handle himself. That's what it felt like." Before Michaela could respond, Bumblebee let out a short, reassuring series of tones, almost as if he were trying to calm Naruto down. Naruto sighed, his scowl softening just slightly. Yeah, I get it. Bigger picture and all that." By the time the Autobots caught up, Bumblebee slowed down to join them in formation, allowing the attack vehicles to roll forward. Naruto rolled down the window, his sharp gaze locking onto Optimus as the leader. Optimus rolled a bit closer, as if trying to look closely at Naruto. "You're upset," he stated, his tone gentle yet firm. Naruto didn't flinch, meeting the Autobot leader's gaze head-on. "Yeah, I am," he said bluntly. "But it doesn't matter right now. What matters is making sure the Decepticons don't get their hands on the Allspark." Optimus studied him for a moment before nodding. "Your resolve is commendable, Naruto, and you're right, protecting the Allspark is our priority. But you must know, my choice was difficult," he said shortly. The comms went black for a few seconds before he continued. "I didn't want to harm the other humans when going to help you, and I knew you were strong enough to handle it, so I ended up making a brash move." Naruto leaned back in his seat. His expression calm, though his mind raced. The memory of being abandoned by Optimus still lingered, sharp as ever. While he didn't doubt the sincerity in the Autobot leader's words, forgiveness wasn't something Naruto could give, not yet. But no matter his feelings, he wouldn't let them face the Decepticons alone. That much was certain. The Camaro rolled steadily up the highway, the city skyline now visible on the horizon. They were minutes away from their destination. Naruto glanced over at Michaela, who seemed tense but determined. Shifting his gaze to the back seat, his eyes fell on the Allspark, its shimmering metallic form glowing faintly in the daylight. Satisfied that it was secure, Naruto looked back out the window, and froze. A smirk tugged at his lips as he spotted something in the distance, reflected in Bumblebee's side mirror. It was him, the Decepticon posing as a police car, the one Bumblebee had fought before. The black and white vehicle sped up the highway, weaving through traffic like a predator stalking its prey. But it wasn't alone. Beside it was a hulking, sinister-looking truck with a mechanical claw mounted on top, its sharp talons gleaming menacingly in the sunlight. Naruto narrowed his eyes, adrenaline starting to course through him. "Michaela," he said, his voice low and steady, "we've got company." Michaela turned, following his gaze. Her eyes widened when she saw the two Decepticons approaching. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, her grip tightening on the seat. Naruto's smirk widened. "This is perfect," he said, leaning forward. "I've been waiting to blow off some steam, and plus, that cop car needs to stop chasing us around." Bumblebee let out a series of worried beeps, clearly cautioning against engaging. "I know, B," Naruto said, placing a hand on the dashboard. "I know we've got the Allspark to protect. But they're not giving us a choice. If we let them get too close, they'll tear us apart before we even reach the city, so I'll engage and catch up, you two just keep going." Bumblebee hesitated for a moment before letting out a low growl of agreement. His engine revved, signaling his readiness. "Good," Naruto said, his grin now razor-sharp. He turned to Michaela, her worried look making him feel stuck. "Are you really going to do this?" she asked, her voice making the blonde paused, but it wasn't 2 seconds after that he gave a quick nod, then we will get you close enough to get that bastard. Naruto's grin widened, before the calm on Bumblebee roared to life, I will join you as well, I would like to see what you believe you can do, said Optimus, not dismissing the human, but not fully trusting him to 2 Decepticons either. Naruto smirked at Optimus's voice coming through the comms, fine by me, he said, rolling his shoulders as if prepping for battle. Just try not to get in my way. Michaela gave him a last look of concern but nodded, her grip tightening on her seatbelt as Bumblebee began accelerating once more. Stay safe, Naruto, she said, her tone a mixture of worry and determination. Don't worry about me, Naruto replied, opening Bumblebee's door mid-drive, worry about getting the cube to safety. Before Michaela could respond, Naruto leaped out, flipping mid-air as his chakra flared around him, cushioning his descent onto the pavement. He landed with ease, crouched in the middle of the highway. His eyes locked onto the 2 vehicles barreling toward him, their engines roaring with malevolence. Optimus Prime's massive truck form roared past Bumblebee, slowing just enough to transform mid-motion. He skidded to a stop beside Naruto, his towering form casting a long shadow over the road. His optics glowed as he regarded the blonde. I'll handle Bone Crusher, you take Barricade, he said, his tone commanding but respectful. Works for me, Naruto replied, cracking his knuckles as he filed those names in his mind. His chakra flared visibly now, a faint blue hue sparking to life around him. He sprinted forward, closing the gap between himself and the Decepticons. Barricade transformed mid-air, his massive humanoid form slamming onto the highway with a deafening thud. His optics glowed crimson, his towering frame bristling with weapons. A smug, predatory grin spread across his metallic face, he clearly thought the human would be an easy target. Meanwhile, Bone Crusher was already in his robot form, the claw that had been mounted on his vehicle frame now resting menacingly on his back. With wheels spinning beneath his feet, he hurtled toward Optimus, his sheer size and aggression forcing the Autobot leader to brace for impact. Naruto quickly assessed the situation, the chaos unfolding in every direction. His arsenal of jutsu and techniques flashed through his mind like a deck of cards being shuffled. Barricade lunged toward him, arms wide, ready to crush him on the spot. Without hesitation, Naruto funneled chakra to his legs, his reflexes sharpening. Just as Barricade came within inches, Naruto dropped low, sliding beneath the massive Decepticon. Sparks flew as his chakra-enhanced slide carried him safely to the other side. Barricade's momentum sent him skidding across the highway, his metal frame screeching against the asphalt. Naruto flipped to his feet, his movements fluid and calm as he positioned himself for Barricade's next move. From his peripheral vision, he saw Optimus and Bone Crusher crashing through the guardrail, their fight spilling off the highway and into the terrain below. The blonde chuckled to himself at the sight, muttering, "Guess the big guy's got his hands full." Barricade, however, was far from amused. The Decepticon's optics flared brighter, his movements more aggressive as he turned to face the blonde. Fury radiated from him as he charged again, this time faster, his rage fueling his speed. Naruto dodged once more, his chakra-enhanced agility allowing him to stay one step ahead. But then Barricade's right arm shifted, the metallic plates rearranging into a massive energy cannon. Naruto's smirk vanished as the first blast narrowly missed him, the heat from the energy bolts searing the air around him. He darted to the side, weaving through each shot with increasing urgency. "All right, no more games," Naruto muttered, his tone sharp. He jumped to avoid another shot, flipping mid-air as he formed 3 rapid hand seals. Taking a deep breath, he summoned chakra to his lungs, igniting the air within. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu, he yelled, exhaling a massive fireball that roared toward Barricade. The blazing inferno engulfed the Decepticon, the intense flames licking at his armor as they consumed him. For a moment, Naruto hovered in the air, watching as the fire twisted and danced, illuminating the scene in vivid orange and red. The heat radiated in waves, distorting the space around the highway. But the moment was short-lived. Barricade burst through the fire, his frame glowing red-hot in places where the flames had scorched his armor. His optics burned with raw fury. And his movements were wild and unrestrained. He launched himself at Naruto with a primal roar, his rage fueling his every step. Naruto's smirk returned, sharper and more dangerous than before. "Oh, you're pissed now, huh?" he muttered, landing gracefully on the highway as Barricade closed the distance. "Good, let's see what you're really made of." Barricade charged at Naruto with unrelenting fury, his heavy metal steps shaking the highway. Naruto stood his ground, his mind racing as he calculated his next move. The Decepticon's massive frame was intimidating, but Naruto's confidence didn't waver. He had the skills, and now, the memories, to back it up. As Barricade closed in, Naruto leaped into the air, channeling chakra to his hands. "Futon, Shinkaha," he called out, spinning mid-air and releasing a powerful wave of compressed wind. The sharp gust hit Barricade square in the chest, slicing into his armor and forcing him to stumble backward. The blonde landed gracefully, his eyes narrowing as he watched Barricade recover. "That wake you up, big guy?" he taunted, a sharp grin on his face. Barricade growled, his arm cannon charging another blast. Before he could fire, Naruto weaved through the air, closing the distance in a blur. He slammed his hands into the ground, sending a surge of chakra beneath the asphalt. "Doton, Yomi Numa," he shouted, creating a small swamp that ensnared Barricade's legs, the sticky ground locking him in place for a moment. The Decepticon roared in frustration, his cannon firing wildly, trying to hit the blonde. Naruto dodged each shot with practiced ease, flipping and rolling as the energy blasts scorched the highway around him. "You're not looking so tough now," Naruto yelled, landing a few feet away. His hands moved quickly through a set of seals. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, small, rapid-fire fireballs shot from his mouth, peppering Barricade's upper body and forcing him to shield his optics. But the Decepticon was far from done. With a roar, he ripped himself free from the swamp, lunging toward Naruto with a swipe of his massive arm. Naruto jumped back just in time, but the force of the swing sent a shockwave that nearly knocked him off his feet. "All right," Naruto muttered, his tone serious now, "time to finish this." He clapped his hands together, creating a familiar hand seal, two shadow clones that appeared at his side in bursts of smoke, both holding grins just like the original. The clones immediately darted toward Barricade, zigzagging to avoid the Decepticon's cannon fire. One clone jumped onto Barricade's arm, slamming a chakra-enhanced punch into his shoulder joint, while the other distracted him by hurling rock infused with explosive chakra. Not having any kunai won him, so this would have to do. As the rock detonated, Barricade stumbled, trying to swat the clones away. "Now's my chance," Naruto muttered, focusing chakra into his hand. A swirling blue sphere began to form, the energy crackling with power. "Rasengan," he yelled, charging forward at full speed. His clones continued their assault, keeping Barricade off balance long enough for Naruto to close the distance. With a battle cry, Naruto leaped into the air, slamming the Rasengan directly into Barricade's chest. The attack drilled into the Decepticon's armor, creating a massive dent and sending him flying backward. Barricade crashed onto the highway, skidding and sparking as he came to a stop. The Decepticon groaned, smoke rising from the damage, his movements sluggish now. Naruto stood tall, breathing heavily, a triumphant smirk on his face, "and that's how you take down a walking scrap heap," he said, glancing back at Bumblebee and Michaela. Bumblebee let out an excited beep, clearly impressed, while Michaela just stared, her expression a mix of awe and disbelief. Naruto dusted off his hands and turned back toward Barricade. "Don't get up," he warned, his tone deadly serious. "Next time, I won't hold back." The blonde let out a small chuckle, his eyes drifting to the smoldering wreckage of Barricade. The Decepticon lay in a heap, completely immobilized. The blonde flexed his fingers, his hands still buzzing from the power of the Rasengan. He had finally proven to himself, and to everyone else, that he was more than just a bystander in this war. But there wasn't time to dwell on it. The fight wasn't over, and Naruto knew the others were depending on him. He turned to bolt toward the next skirmish, but a deep, commanding voice stopped him in his tracks. "Well done, Naruto." Optimus Prime's towering form emerged from the shadows, his optics glowing as they locked onto the blonde. "You've demonstrated courage and skill beyond expectation. I never expected any life form on this planet to be able to do such a thing." Naruto glanced over his shoulder, a small smirk tugging at his lips. "Thanks, but it's not all that normal anymore. I'm pretty sure I'm the last person with my abilities now. Anyway, I don't think we have time for compliments. The others need backup, and I'm not about to sit around while they're out there risking everything." Optimus took a step forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the blonde. "I admire your determination, but you must understand the stakes. I sense Megatron has already awakened. This battle could spiral beyond our control. I cannot allow that to happen." Naruto's smirk faded, his expression hardening. "And you think I can't handle it? I just took down Barricade by myself." Optimus's optics softened. "You are strong, Naruto. Stronger than I expected, but this war is larger than any one of us. If you go after Megatron alone, you risk more than just your life. You risk the Allspark and everything we are fighting for." Naruto sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I get it, Optimus. But if we sit around waiting, we're giving the Decepticons more time to regroup. I'm not about to let that happen." Optimus regarded him for a moment, his gaze unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I will not deter you from your path, but I will not leave Megatron unchecked. I will follow, but shortly after I will circle the city, in search of Megatron. Do what you must, but do not take unnecessary risks. The fate of your world depends on it." Naruto nodded, determination burning in his eyes. "Fine, big guy, but don't expect me to wait around for backup." Optimus transformed back into his truck form, his engine rumbling as he prepared to move out. "May the Allspark guide you, Naruto." Naruto leapt onto Optimus's hood as the Autobot leader sped toward the city. The air around them felt tense, the weight of their mission pressing down. After a short ride, they parted ways. Optimus heading off to locate Megatron while Naruto rejoined the Autobots, Lennox, and the other soldiers. Naruto positioned himself next to Michaela, his arms crossed as he tried to focus on the task ahead. His eyes scanned the area, taking in the soldiers' preparations. The sound of Lennox barking commands into a low-signal microphone pulled his attention. A moment later, Lennox handed it off to Epps, who spoke into the comm with increasing frustration. "Anything?" Lennox asked. Epps shook his head, tension written on his face. No response. "I don't understand what the hell is going on. I'll pop smoke. Maybe they ain't responding 'cause they can't see us." Green smoke suddenly blanketed the area. And a second later Epps spoke into the comm again, getting no response just like the first time. Naruto tensed, glancing at the Autobots. He saw them all turning to their robot forms as Ironhide carefully looked into the air. And as if he saw something he didn't like, the robot's optics widened when seeing a jet fly over them. A low, rough voice cut through the haze. That's not the Air Force, Ironhide growled, stepping in front of everyone while clenching his metal fist. That's Starscream. Naruto's eyes snapped upward, along with everyone else's. A sleek military jet streaked across the sky, its alien markings glinting ominously in the sunlight. The sound of a missile lock-on pierced the air. Move, Ironhide bellowed. Naruto didn't need to be told twice. As the missile launched from Starscream's underbelly, he sprinted alongside Ironhide and Bumblebee. Without hesitation, the two Autobots hoisted a nearby truck, preparing to use it as a makeshift shield. Naruto dove in to help, grabbing the edge of the truck. Ironhide glanced down at him, his optics narrowing in confusion. What are you doing, human? Get back before you get hurt. Naruto gritted his teeth, his chakra flaring as he strained against the weight. I'm stronger than I look, trust me. Ironhide seemed unconvinced but had no time to argue. Together, they raised the truck just as the missile struck. The explosion was deafening. A shockwave blasting outward and engulfing the area in flames and smoke. Naruto felt himself being thrown back, the force of the blast tearing at his body. He hit the ground hard, rubble scattering around him as he came to a stop. Groaning, he pushed himself up, his arms shaking from the strain. His ears rang, his vision blurred, but he could make out Michaela sprinting toward him. Naruto, she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering uncertainly over his arms and shoulders. Are you okay? Can you move? Naruto winced, but he managed a grin. Yeah, I've had worse, just, give me a second. Nearby, Ironhide groaned as he pulled himself out of a ditch on the side of the road. His frame dented but intact. Bumblebee had been flung into a storefront, his chassis sparking as he struggled to get up. Above them, Starscream was gone, probably off telling their location to the others. Naruto wiped the dust from his face, his eyes narrowing as he watched the Decepticon jet soar overhead. I'm not letting him get away with that, Naruto muttered, forcing himself to stand despite Michaela's protests. His hands clenched into fists, chakra beginning to swirl around him. What are you doing? Michaela asked, panic creeping into her voice. Naruto smirked, the fire of determination blazing in his eyes. What I do best, improvising. As Starscream descended for another strike, Naruto steadied himself on the debris, his sharp eyes locked onto the incoming Decepticon. This ends now, he muttered, channeling chakra into his legs. When Starscream was low enough, Naruto sprang into action, propelling himself high into the air with a burst of chakra. The soldiers and Autobots below watched in stunned silence as he soared toward the incoming missile. With precise timing, Naruto grabbed hold of the missile's body, his hands glowing with raw chakra to reinforce his grip. The sheer force of the speeding projectile made his arms ache, but he gritted his teeth and powered through, using his momentum to swing it around. Take this back, you overgrown scrap heap. Naruto shouted, hurling the missile back toward Starscream with all his might. The improvised counterattack was a sight to behold. The missile arced through the air, detonating just shy of a direct hit but close enough to send the jet spiraling out of control. The resulting explosion rocked the battlefield, sending Starscream careening into the distance in a plume of black smoke. Naruto landed back on the ground with a heavy thud, rolling to his feet with ease. He dusted himself off, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The silence that followed was deafening. Lennox, Michaela, and the soldiers stared at him with wide eyes, their disbelief written all over their faces. Even Ironhide seemed momentarily stunned, his optics fixed on the blonde with something close to awe. Naruto smirked, brushing some dirt off his sleeve. What, never seen a guy throw a missile before? Michaela blinked, shaking her head. You're insane. That was insane. Lennox managed to find his voice, stepping forward. "Kid, I don't know how you did that, but remind me never to underestimate you again." Naruto gave a casual shrug, his grin widening. "Told you I'm stronger than I look." Ironhide let out a deep rumble of approval. "Impressive, for a human. You might not be as useless as I thought." The blonde would have become sheepish if they weren't in the middle of an otherworldly war. He quickly noticed that Bumblebee was nowhere to be found, and his expression grew concerned. "Where's Bee?" Naruto called out, his voice laced with urgency. Michaela looked away, and Ironhide lowered his optics. Naruto's confusion only deepened for a moment before realization hit him, worry creeping into his voice. "Is he?" Naruto didn't finish the sentence, the question hung heavy in the air. "He's still alive," Ironhide answered after a pause, his tone somber, "but Ratchet says he should be taken out of the battle." The Autobot tilted his head downward, his grief evident. Naruto's eyes narrowed, the worry in them flashing like a storm. Memories of Bumblebee nearly freezing to death in past battles came flooding back, making him grit his teeth. Shaking his head to dispel the thoughts, he locked his gaze on Ironhide. "Take me to him," Naruto said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Ironhide nodded, transforming and opening his passenger door. Naruto climbed in without hesitation, and Michaela followed close behind on foot. The drive was short but tense, with silence hanging heavily in the air. When they arrived, Naruto felt his breath catch in his throat. Bumblebee was slumped against a crumbling storefront, his legs completely torn away. The yellow Autobot's optics dimmed with pain, and soft, wounded whines escaped him. Naruto approached slowly, his heart sinking. "Bee, what happened?" he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Bumblebee didn't respond. Only tilting his head toward Michaela, who stepped forward reluctantly, her frown deepened as she spoke. "Remember the missile you blocked with that truck?" she asked softly, earning a nod from Naruto. "When Bumblebee was thrown, he hit the corner of the building, the heat and force tore his legs off." Naruto clenched his fists, his heart aching as he turned back to Bumblebee. His voice trembled as he said, "You're gonna be fine, Bee, I won't leave you here." Before he could say anything more, Michaela cut him off. "You're going to have to," she said firmly, "you're needed in the fight, I'll get Bee out of here." Naruto's head snapped toward her, confusion and frustration in his voice. "How are you going to do that?" Michaela's eyes darted around until they landed on a tow truck parked nearby. She pointed to it. "That," she said confidently. Naruto stared at the tow truck, then back at Michaela. "There's no way I'm letting you do that." "It's too dangerous," he argued. "It doesn't matter how dangerous it is," Michaela shot back, her voice rising. "You can't fight those things and protect Bumblebee at the same time." "I don't care," Naruto yelled, his voice breaking. "If you take Bumblebee, the Decepticons will come after you." "I know I brought you into this mess," he continued, his tone desperate, "but I can't let you go out there like this." Michaela stepped closer, pushing the Allspark into his arms with a determined expression. "I need to do this," she said, "you're the only one who can end this fight." Naruto tried to form a response, but his words faltered as her next one struck home. "Remember what I told you when we first beat that cop car?" she asked. He hesitated, his mind racing, but Michaela's resolve never wavered. "I don't need your protection," she said softly, but firmly. Before he could protest, Michaela leaned in and kissed him, her lips warm and trembling against his. Naruto froze, his emotions swirling as the chaos around them seemed to fade. For a moment, nothing else existed but the two of them. When the kiss ended, Michaela stepped back, her eyes glistening but determined. "I have to do this," she repeated. Naruto stared at her, his hands trembling as he clutched the Allspark. He wanted to argue, to stop her, but deep down, he knew she was right. "Just stay safe," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I will," Michaela said with a soft smile before turning to the tow truck. As she climbed into the vehicle and began hotwiring it, Naruto clenched his fists, forcing himself to turn away. Ironhide placed a massive hand on Naruto's shoulder, his voice gruff but supportive. "She'll be fine. Now, Lennox said he had something to tell us, let's move." Naruto nodded, wiping his eyes quickly before running off with Ironhide. His determination renewed. Michaela watched him go for a moment, her heart heavy, before turning her focus back to Bumblebee. "All right, big guy," she muttered, gripping the wheel tightly, "let's get you out of here." Naruto gave a hardened nod, not saying a word before posting the Allspark on his right. The two made their way to Lennox in silence, the tension between them palpable. When they arrived, Lennox wasted no time laying out the plan. His voice was clipped and urgent as he gestured to the Allspark now tightly clutched in Naruto's hands. "We've got a chopper inbound, and it's going to extract the Allspark from the top of that building," he said, pointing to a structure barely visible through the smoke and chaos. "You're the fastest one here, so you're taking it. Megatron's been spotted in the city though, so this isn't going to be a cakewalk." Naruto's eyes narrowed at the mention of Megatron. His grip on the Allspark tightened, the weight of the mission bore down on him, but he gave a single nod, his expression calm but resolute. "Understood," Naruto replied before turning on his heel and sprinting toward the towering structure in the distance. As he channeled chakra into his legs, Naruto weaved through the battlefield, his enhanced speed carrying him like a blur through the chaos. The streets were a war zone, filled with the deafening sounds of explosions, gunfire, and the mechanical roars of clashing titans. Buildings crumbled around him as Decepticons and Autobots clashed, their sheer size and strength reducing the urban landscape to rubble. Civilians screamed in terror, soldiers barked commands, and vehicles exploded into fiery wreckage. A missile whistled overhead before slamming into a nearby building, the shockwave nearly knocking Naruto off his feet. Dust and debris filled the air, choking his lungs as he pushed forward. He leaped over overturned cars and dodged falling chunks of concrete, the chaos seeming to narrow into a single path toward his goal. Ahead of him, Starscream barreled down from the sky. He transformed mid-air, landing with a loud crash. Red optics locked onto Naruto. Jet-shaped machine snarled, raising its arm-mounted cannon to fire another missile. "Not now," Naruto muttered, jumping high into the air as the missile discharged. The blast hit the ground where he'd been a split second earlier, sending shards of asphalt flying. Using a burst of chakra, Naruto rebounded off a crumbling wall and vaulted over Starscream's head, landing behind it before sprinting off again. Explosions erupted to his left as Ratchet and Ironhide engaged another Decepticon in the distance. The sound of rattling machine guns mixed with the piercing cries of civilians who hadn't escaped the area. Naruto gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to stop and help them. Every fiber of his being screamed to intervene. But the Allspark in his hands was too important. "Focus, Naruto, focus," he whispered to himself, his blue eyes blazing with determination. As he neared the building, the sound of jet engines screamed overhead. His heart sank as he glanced up to see Starscream circling the area, his menacing form glinting in the firelit sky. The Decepticon jet tilted, preparing to make another attack run. "Great, just great," Naruto muttered, skidding to a stop as Starscream opened fire. The ground in front of him erupted in a series of explosions, forcing him to dart to the side. He ducked behind the wreckage of a destroyed bus, panting as he assessed his next move. The heat of the battlefield and the weight of the Allspark made every second feel heavier. Naruto peeked out just in time to see Starscream circling back for another pass. "Guess I'll have to deal with you first," he muttered, setting the Allspark down behind a makeshift barricade before clenching his fists. The battlefield was alive with destruction, but Naruto's focus narrowed to the jet in the sky. "Let's see how you like this," he growled, chakra swirling around him as he prepared to engage. Naruto's patience had worn thin. Starscream had been a constant thorn in his side, always swooping in and keeping him on edge. He raised his hand, focusing his chakra as his signature technique began to form. The swirling ball of energy that took shape in his palm wasn't just his usual Rasengan, it was more, much more. The sphere spun faster and faster, the whirring sound intensifying until it began to pull at the very air around him. Wind whipped violently through the battlefield, kicking up debris and swirling around the blonde like a vortex. The Rasengan, once a solid, brilliant blue, began to shift, its edges becoming translucent as sharp currents of wind intertwined with the chakra. Naruto's eyes narrowed with determination as he lifted his arm, the massive energy sphere now evolving into something far deadlier. The Rasen Shuriken, the culmination of his training, his will, and his resolve, hovered in his hand, crackling with raw, destructive energy. Starscream circled overhead, unaware of the doom heading his way. Naruto didn't wait. With a sharp motion, he hurled the Rasen Shuriken with all his strength. The spinning disk of wind and chakra roared as it cut through the air, a deadly storm of destruction on a collision course with the Decepticon. Starscream turned too late, his optics widening as the attack slammed into him. The Rasen Shuriken exploded on impact, slicing through Starscream's metallic form with devastating precision. His screech of pain echoed through the city as his body was ripped apart. The sheer force of the attack splitting him clean in half. The remains of the Decepticon plummeted from the sky, crashing into the ground with a deafening thud. Smoke and sparks erupted from the wreckage as Starscream's broken form lay motionless. Naruto stood still for a moment, watching the aftermath with a satisfied smirk. "Guess you're grounded for good," he muttered under his breath. With a final glance at the wreckage, he turned and began moving toward his next objective. The battlefield still raged around him, but for now, Naruto allowed himself a small sense of accomplishment, one less Decepticon to deal with. Naruto's breathing was ragged as he reached the top of the building. The Allspark tucked securely under his arm. He was ready to complete the mission, ready to hand it off to the awaiting helicopter that would take it to safety. But just as the aircraft approached, the entire building shuddered violently. The blonde barely had time to process what was happening before the wall behind him exploded inward, sending concrete and debris flying in all directions. The massive forms of Optimus Prime and Megatron came crashing through the structure, locked in a brutal melee. Their titanic strikes shook the very foundation of the building, and before Naruto could find his footing, the sudden impact threw him off balance. "Damn it!" Naruto's voice was lost in the chaos as he slipped over the edge. Desperately, he reached for anything to stop his fall, but his hands only met empty air. The next thing he knew, he was plummeting toward the street below. The impact was jarring, the force sending a shockwave of pain through his body as he landed hard on a pile of rubble. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he thought he might black out. "Get up, gotta get up," he muttered to himself, forcing his body to move despite the screaming protests from his muscles. He clutched his ribs, feeling the sharp sting of what was likely a fracture, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. Above him, the battle between Optimus and Megatron raged on, their massive forms trading blows that could tear through steel. The air was filled with the sound of metal clashing against metal, punctuated by the thunderous crashes of their strikes. Optimus managed to shove Megatron back for a moment, turning his attention briefly to Naruto. His voice, even through the distortion of his mechanical frame, carried a grave determination. Naruto, if it comes to it, if we cannot defeat him, you must push the all-spark into my chest, Optimus said, his optics narrowing. Naruto's eyes widened, the weight of those words hitting him like another fall. What? No way, I'm not letting you, there is no other way, Optimus interrupted, his tone firm. If I fall, it must be destroyed, even at the cost of my life. Naruto clenched his fists, gritting his teeth as he forced himself to his feet. We're not losing anyone else today, he growled. Not if I can help it. Before he could say more, Megatron charged, slamming into Optimus with bone-shaking force. The two titans crashed back into the street, the ground trembling beneath them. Naruto ignored the pain in his body and sprinted toward the battle, his mind racing. He couldn't let Optimus face this alone, not after everything. Summoning what chakra he could, he formed a Rasengan in his hand, the familiar swirling energy giving him the strength to push forward. As Optimus blocked a powerful strike from Megatron's blade, Naruto leapt onto Megatron's back, slamming the Rasengan into one of the Decepticon's shoulder joints. The attack exploded on contact, causing Megatron to roar in pain as sparks flew from the damaged area. Annoying pest, Megatron snarled, reaching back to swat at Naruto like an insect. But Naruto was already moving, flipping off the Decepticon and landing beside Optimus. You're not doing this alone, Naruto said, his voice steady despite the pain in his body. Optimus nodded, his expression unreadable but his resolve clear. Then we fight together. The two charged at Megatron, Naruto's smaller form weaving between Optimus's powerful strikes. While Optimus engaged Megatron head-on, Naruto aimed for the weak points, slamming a Rasengan into his leg joint, hurling chakra-infused kicks at his chest plate, and using shadow clones to create distractions. Megatron, however, was relentless. His strikes grew more ferocious, and his dark, guttural laughter filled the battlefield. You think you can stop me, Prime? Even with this insect by your side, you will fail. Optimus blocked a heavy swing from Megatron's blade, his arms straining against the force. You underestimate humanity's will to fight, he countered, shoving Megatron back. Naruto took the opportunity to create a clone, which leapt onto Megatron's arm and planted an explosive tag near his shoulder. As the tag detonated, Naruto charged in with another Rasengan, aiming for the same spot. The combined attack caused Megatron to stagger, but he was far from defeated. Enough, he roared, swinging wildly and forcing both Optimus and Naruto to retreat. Naruto wiped sweat and blood from his face, his body screaming for rest, but he refused to stop. We've got him on the ropes, he said, glancing at Optimus. Optimus's optics glowed with resolve. One final push, he said, accenting his words with a metal face plate covering his mouth. Naruto nodded, summoning every ounce of chakra he had left. This time, Naruto focused enough chakra to boost him for a bit, all throughout his body. He couldn't force himself to make another Rasengan. The pain in his body making anything else but this too hard to concentrate for. And with Kurama still asleep, he would have to wait to be healed. The blonde jumped up, meeting Megatron face-face, before he spin-kicked him back. When he landed on Optimus, the Autobot moved to plant a metal fist into Megatron's gut, and right after the leader did another punch, only this time to the Decepticon's head. Megatron tried to move, and block the next incoming hit, but Naruto jumped off of the Prime, and pushed away his guard, leaving him open for another attack. This went on until Megatron had had enough, clasping both of his hands together to form a large cannon, and without time to react, the two were blown back. Naruto hit the ground hard, skidding across the rubble-strewn street before slamming into a broken car. Every nerve in his body screamed in pain, but he forced himself to sit up, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. Across from him, Optimus groaned, his armor dented and sparking from the blast, but he still pushed himself back onto his feet. Megatron stood tall, his crimson optics blazing with triumph as his fusion cannon hummed, ready to fire again. "You cannot win, Prime," Megatron bellowed, his voice echoing across the ruined city. "This world will kneel before me, and there's nothing you or this pathetic insect can do to stop it." Optimus steadied himself, his blade extending from his arm. He glanced at Naruto, his optics narrowing with resolve. Naruto's heart clenched as he realized already what the Prime wanted. He wouldn't do it, he would ignore his pleas for this type of sacrifice. He would have closed his eyes, but he needed to keep his eyes on Megatron. He had to come up with something quick, or this would have all been for nothing. "Give me the cube, boy," Megatron said, his voice dark and full of intent. Naruto realized what had to be done, even as the weight of the decision settled heavily on his shoulders. He knew how dangerous it was, how reckless it might seem, but there was no other way. With a burst of determination, he forced himself to his feet, chakra flaring through his battered body. Without a second thought, he launched himself at Megatron, his speed catching the Decepticon leader's attention. Megatron's massive hand shot out, catching the blonde midair. The Decepticon scoffed, his crimson optics gleaming with mockery. "You dare challenge me, human, pathetic." Naruto gritted his teeth, struggling against the iron grip. His mind raced, his plan hinging on a single moment. The All-Spark, the key to ending this battle, had been at his side the entire fight. Now, it was in his arms, its energy pulsing like a heartbeat. Summoning every ounce of his remaining strength, Naruto twisted in Megatron's grip, narrowly avoiding being crushed. With a yell that echoed across the battlefield, he thrust the All-Spark into Megatron's chest. Sparks erupted violently as the cube's energy surged into the Decepticon. Megatron's eyes widened in shock and pain, his body convulsing as the All-Spark's raw power consumed him. "No," he roared, his voice crackling with desperation. The energy built to a blinding crescendo, arcs of light shooting out and illuminating the ruined city. Naruto was thrown back by the force of the release, tumbling across the rubble as Megatron's form began to destabilize. His armor cracked, fragments disintegrating into the ether as the All-Spark's energy tore him apart from within. With a final, earth-shaking explosion, Megatron collapsed to the ground, his body lifeless and shattered. The All-Spark's power dissipated, leaving behind only silence and the faint crackle of electricity. Naruto lay on the ground, his body aching and his vision blurry, but he managed a weak smile. The battle was over, they had won. Optimus Prime approached slowly, his frame battered but still standing tall. He looked down at Megatron's remains, then at Naruto. His voice was solemn, yet filled with respect. "You have done what I could not, you even let yourself be caught by Megatron's clutches." Naruto chuckled weakly, coughing from the effort. "Yeah, well, no sacrifice, no victory." Optimus extended a hand, carefully lifting the blonde from the ground. "Your bravery will not be forgotten. This world owes you its gratitude." Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto gave a tired grin, leaning on Optimus as they surveyed the wreckage. "God, I hope they don't make us clean this mess," he said, chuckling to himself.